What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Press X Podcast, episode 105, your weekly podcast for gaming news and opinions, coming at you each and every Monday at noon Eastern. I am Kevin McManus. With me, Nick Hassell.
Yep, it's me.
No Kellen.
We don't need him. Don't think we have room.
That might be true. We don't know what we're going to do about his Game of the Year stuff just yet. He couldn't make it today, so we'll figure that out eventually.
Yeah.
But we're moving on with Adam. We got a show to do.
Mm-hmm.
And with that said, I'm going to apologize for last week's audio. Obviously, it was terrible. Everybody noticed. It was no secret. Basically, long story short, the file got too big and crashed and didn't autosave, and we just lost all the audio. And then that's happened like once before, and it wasn't too bad. But the other problem was we had the fan on like 2 feet from the camera. So now we still have the fan on like 2 feet from the camera. So hopefully this audio works, but we're going to be more careful and check it. Maybe take a break here or there.
As
just
with
to
mini
make sure
games,
going.
right now, autosave is a very important feature, and you can get screwed without it. So.
Yeah. Well, a part of the issue is Audacity saves files very weird. It doesn't save it as just a straight file. Yeah. It breaks it up into little files and then pieces it together, basically. And if it gets corrupted and any of those pieces start going missing, Audacity's like, I don't know what to do. Do you know what to do? I'm like, I sure don't. It actually happened once before, and I fixed it, which is why I wasn't worried about it.
Yeah.
Last week when we finished, could not salvage it.
To be fair, it fit with the whole disappointing theme of the episode.
That's true. That episode was disappointing.
Stayed on point. So
yeah, I have like a perfectionist thing where I like everything to be exactly how I wanted it, but once you're working with other people, that goes out the window. Like, I'm not going to be like, all right, we're refilming the whole episode, guys. We lost the audio. Like, I can't do that. But I have multiple things that I've done where it's just me that I haven't put out because I didn't like them, or I stopped halfway through, or I just reshot the whole thing multiple times.
Plus, it's easier to, when like we've missed segments before, or we messed up, or forgotten something, and we can just kind of tack it on at the end. That's easy. But to be like, hey guys, it's Tuesday, can you come back? It's like, what did we even say? So
we messed this up. With that said, this is the Game of the Year 2017 episode. We're going to be done talking 2017 soon. We're going to be looking forward, kind of starting next week, to 2018, and that's going to be great. But this is our Game of the Year episode. As with all the Game of the Year episodes that I've had so far, no rules, no rhyme or reason, just you do your thing. Talk about it. We'll discuss why. Maybe I'll ask you some questions. I do my thing. Talk about it. You know. I don't know what your system. I'll explain what my system is, just so we know. So my system was I did a top 10 list, and then I have a bunch of honorable mentions that I'm going to go over. I'm not going to talk in depth about the honorable mentions, maybe like a sentence or so. Yeah. And then for each choice on my list, I wrote like a paragraph that I'm just going to read. And then maybe some bullet points to talk about, maybe, why this moment triggered this thought for me.
Okay.
I was like, oh, this is going on the list because of this moment.
Well,
Things
just
like
naturally, too, when you're playing some of the more anticipated games, I guess, on your list, you tend to have a little journal or notepad or whatever with you where you kind of jot down notes. So you're more likely to go into specific moments and this did this for me sort of thing rather than just wait for, like someone like me, where I just wait for a comprehensive thing at the end, where when you get into these 100-hour games, maybe you lose some.
So many this year, man. So many. Like, I love this year. It was, to me, the return of Japanese games.
Yeah.
I could have made an all-Japanese list, honestly, like, easily. In fact, I almost did. And like, that's awesome, but one thing about Japanese games is they tend to be a lot longer. Not always, but a lot of their even just normal genre games are like Dynasty Warriors games are long. They take a long time, even though they
like to add in a bunch of like most Western games just have one system, one way of doing things, but Japan likes to be like, well, also if you want more companions, there's this whole system over here.
It's also a dating sim, and if you go here, you can play volleyball. Like, what?
Yeah.
There's only one game I know that just randomly let you play volleyball this year, unless Yakuza does.
No.
Mario lets you play volleyball.
It does.
And it's very frustrating.
Is it?
I thought so.
I just did it for the moon.
There's 2 moons. You have to do 100 volleys to get the second moon.
I did 12 and called it or 15, whatever it was.
It's very frustrating.
So that was your system.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, basically I attacked this in sort of a, if you're familiar with soccer sort of tournaments, what they do is a seed system and then group stage, bracket and then declare a winner. And then you can kind of get first, second, third through 8th, 10th, whatever out of that. So what I did is this year, I played a lot of games.
I thought I played way more than I did. And then I looked at my trophies and everything, and I don't think I played as much as 2016, which is crazy because I definitely played more than 2016. And it's just those, I put, 100-something hours into this. I put 25 hours into this. I put 40 hours into that.
Spread out, instead of spread out, you just packed it all into more titles. Did some statistics because I was just kind of wondering, because this year, like you sort of said about 2017, it kept me in the house more as far as like I didn't go out as much because there's just so much to play. And I felt, when I was getting into hour 80, hour 90 of some of these things, I was like, man, I've got these other 2 games I really need to get to.
Yeah.
Played over 50 games, bought 40, beat 25, which, those numbers aren't astronomical, but when you factor in something like Persona, something like Xenoblade.
My average game time for a game this year was probably 30 hours.
20, 30, yeah.
Like, if you include, like, Tekken, stuff that we put so many hours into. Splatoon, I put 82. Gravity Rush, I put 50. Like,
even things like Puyo Puyo, I mean, 2 or 3 hours every weekend.
Yeah,
so,
it's insane.
But with that being said, I went through on Metacritic first, and what I just did for bracket purposes to make this real clean and easy, so I could just kind of automate a lot of this, picked the top 32 games that I had played. So if it was something like Edith Finch, which was highly rated on whatever you went to look at, Metacritic, Game Rankings, just IGN type sites, I didn't include it because I don't like saying, it's the best if I've never played it.
That makes sense.
So pick the top 32 games that I had played, either bought, played, watched, streamed all the way through. It just had some good impressions of. Went through Metacritic, got their rankings. Went through Game Rankings, got their rankings. Took the average, seeded them based on that. Ran it through a tournament. So what I did, I would make groups and just let the computer pick where things would go. I didn't manually go, this one deserves to be in this group.
Stupid.
I
I was curious about that because I've seen not your solutions, but I saw the layout of what you had, and like I was going through, I was like, this is easy. Like I feel like there's a lot of softballs in here. I didn't know if you set it up that way.
I didn't manually do that because I feel like I can't be unbiased when I'm doing that, so I just let a computer pick it. Anyways, had all these games fight each other, get to a tournament, and then it's just knockout. Is this game better than this one? Sort of like Game Facts does, like character battles and popular little things like that on the internet. Went all the way down, got my top 10. Actually, I could go 1 through 32 if I had to, but top 10 seems reasonable, and made what I like to do now, at least when talking about it, I like a plus minus delta. Plus being pros, things you liked about the game. Minus being what you didn't like, the cons, and delta, somewhere in between. Delta's like, what could we have made a little bit better, or why is this number 3 instead of number 2, sort of thing. So things that dropped it down a little bit, because obviously 2 through 10 has to have a reason why it wasn't number 1, I guess. So, and every game on here has got its cons. It's got minuses, plenty of pluses, plenty of deltas that they could have made better. So just wanted to make one conclusive list. So, that's how I went about it. Very mathematical and more like sports, or like a knockout sort of thing. Because honestly, this year kind of needed it. There were some pretty stacked competition for a lot of these games, but we'll get to that point.
Yeah, like for me, 2017, like I said, it was this return of these Japanese games. It also had entries in multiple series that I would consider my top 10 favorite video game series of all time. And this happened multiple times. So, like, I'm comparing, the whatever game in this series to the whatever game in this series, and this is my 3rd favorite series ever, and this is my 5th. Yeah. And that showed up a lot of times during this. So, like, I tried to be as objective as possible without, having the series return be too much of a and I think I did a good job.
That's going to hurt next year, too, when we're facing, like, the God of Wars and the Metroids, potentially, and maybe Pokemons that coming to a system,
next year looks weak.
So far.
Looks weak.
So far. But we didn't know quite how
this is a
big
Mega Man next year. We're done. Game of the year.
We didn't know quite how big 2017 was going to be at this point in the 2016 process.
No, that's
either,
true. We did our predictions, and it was funny.
Yeah.
We were like, the Switch might be 2018.
Yeah.
Like, and then we found out, I think a week or two later, not only is it 2017, there's a Zelda, there's a Mario, there's a Splatoon, there's Pokken, there's a Fire Emblem
Fire
Warriors,
Emblem's on the way.
Disgaea, like all the stuff is coming here that we Doom, like that we just never would have thought. So that was fun. But anyway, let's move into our Game of the Year discussion. I guess I'll go first.
Yeah,
do my list. I'll do my. You want to go back and forth, or do you want me to do my list and then you do your
Let's
list?
go back and forth, yeah.
Okay.
Because one of us will run out of water if we just go straight through
That's
the
fair.
entire time.
That's fair. All right, so we'll go back and forth because you do the top 10 as well.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
And I guess if you go over, like if you name my number 1 at number 10, I'll just save most of my comments.
Yeah,
for my
you more
These are
comment
a little more
on
personal, I
my
guess.
personal. Yeah, like if you have a question personally,
Sure.
You don't need to be like, oh, my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Don't make it about you, Nick. Okay. All right.
Oops.
So let's delve in to Game of the Year 2017.
Yep.
So I'm not starting off with my honorable mentions.
Okay.
I am going to go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and get to number 2.
Then do
and
honorable mentions.
Then do all my honorable mentions, and I'll name 2 and 1 after that. So that should be fun.
Okay.
Number 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure this is on your list, Nick. Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue. Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue, the Ground Zero style entry, Birth by Sleep 0.2, a fragmentary passage, was exactly what I wanted to see as a debut tease. Kingdom Hearts 3's gameplay, as a debut tease for Kingdom Hearts 3's gameplay. Beautiful visuals that rival blockbuster animated movies. Particle effects that don't slow the game down. Fluid, fast-paced combat. A blending of all the best systems from each Kingdom Hearts game. This is gonna be a rough.
Yeah,
This is gonna be a rough top 10, guys. On top of that, 0.2 fills in story points that fans have been wanting to know and links itself back to the core numbered series. It marks the return of Sora, as well as sets him off on his adventure for Kingdom Hearts 3. While short, 0.2 gave fans confidence, teased events to come in Kingdom Hearts 3, and brought back nostalgic love for the series without muddying up the Kingdom Hearts name, despite the fact that the title is quite possibly the worst named game yet in the series. So this game was a January release, super early on, so it's been quite a while, but it was just a short 3-hour, very Metal Gear Solid, very Episode Do Sky style entry, except it had a story to tell that is literally a conclusion story to one of the games and the intro story to Kingdom Hearts 3. Mm-hmm. This ends with the opening of Kingdom. I know it is the opening of Kingdom Hearts 3 that this ends with, and that's super exciting. It ties back its events, like I said, so now when you start looking at some of the stuff that's happened in the previous games, there's a little bit more context. You know kind of what's going on behind closed doors in some of those things, which is very fascinating. They took Birth by Sleep's combat system, which is my favorite, and blended it with Kingdom Hearts 2, which was a lot of other people's favorites, to create this new hybrid system that seems to compromise really well without hurting either of the systems. And they do neat things like instead of you kind of needing to use the same magic over and over to level it up to be able to use stronger spells like you did in the other games, now it's just like an action command, more similar to Final Fantasy 15, where if you use a lot of fire spells, for 10 seconds it's going to say if you do another fire spell, it's going to be Firaja, the like massive one. You know how it's like ga, and then ja. Yeah. It's going to be like the massive one, and the screen just erupts in fire, and all this crazy stuff happens. So they really streamlined it, and it feels like they're preparing it so that there's going to be dozens and dozens and dozens of more enemies rather than more difficult one-on-one battles, because the other ones were PS2 games. Like they were PlayStation 2 games. We skipped the PS3. So this is a whole 2 generations later that we're going to be getting this.
Quite a big technology gap.
It's going to feel like night and day. And even Kingdom Hearts 2 has a famous 100 fight battle where you fight 100 things at once on the PS2. So all that's going to be crazy. I'm expecting this, like, they kind of start playing with scale in this, not hugely, but even in the trailers for Kingdom Hearts 3, you see you're fighting things like God of War, things that are way bigger than anything that you've faced before.
They're doubling down on the Japanese aspect of the game.
Oh, it's very Japanese.
Okay.
Aqua, this one stars Aqua, which Kingdom Hearts is an interesting series for me because I love Kingdom Hearts. This is one of those series that it's one of my favorite of all time, and it got its entry, etc. I don't have a favorite character in Kingdom Hearts, which is very weird for me. I'm normally all about favorite characters, and I don't actually have one. And this one stars Aqua, which is like definitely one of my top tier characters, so it was nice to kind of get more of her and see where her story is kind of going. So she was kind of fighting for the attempt to be my favorite character. We'll have to wait until 3 comes out and find all of that out. But this also included a remake of Dream Drop Distance, which is a remake, and I don't count remakes on my list. That's one of my rules, no remakes, and the game had to come out, like release in North America for the first time for it to be counted. But it also came with a hour-long, maybe like 50-minute long movie that was basically all the cutscenes from the phone game redone in 3D with voice acting and everything, because it's actually important. And it kind of tells the story of, it's like it's like the Star Wars prequels. Like this is like, or not even, it's like Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay, I was gonna say.
It's like way...
that whole 30-year prequel? Yeah.
It's like way earlier, but it talks about the prophecy that's supposed to happen, and then what now, going into Kingdom Hearts 3, you're the prophecy. Like, this is what's happening. So it laid the groundwork for that, and I do consider that part of this package, because that was not a remaster. That was a brand new piece of content. That was actually pretty enjoyable. A story of basically these 5 guilds, which you can kind of think Harry Potter, like Hogwarts has Slytherin and all that stuff. And
you say so.
They're basically... There's these 5 leaders of each, like there's one leader for each one, and they learn that there's a traitor among them, and that's kind of all they know. So it's a whole betrayal of trust and things like that. Introduces some new characters, and introduces things that are literally in this game, the 0.2, and in Kingdom Hearts 3's trailers, at least. So just a really nice, toe dip into Kingdom Hearts 3. I was happy with everything I was seeing. I'm glad that they decided to do this and give it its own story. They added new mechanics that I enjoyed. They added customization for the first time, so like you unlock outfits and you can kind of change what your character is wearing and things like that, and change the color, and I'm sure you'll be unlocking dyes and different colors like that for different challenges. All that stuff sounds awesome. So I was just really happy to be back in that universe with all the new goodies, and most importantly, the performance. It's so fluid. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So, number 10.
Got to give you fans something to do in between the 20-year.
Hold on. Let me read this so I don't mess it up. So, number 10 was Kingdom Hearts 2.8, Final Chapter Prologue, Birth by Sleep 0.2, A Fragmentary Passage.
That's way too many words.
Oh, it's a terrible name. Why couldn't they just call it Kingdom Hearts Aqua's... End of Aqua? Just pull a Resident Evil. End of Aqua. Just tell us what happens.
I don't know.
What do you got?
Start with number 10. Just saying that out loud, so we don't think we're starting from number 1. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
I do want to point something out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this might be the only program you watch that does not have a Zelda. And number 1. Here it is, guys.
It has a 1 and a 0, just not in the way that most people
order
would want it. Positives or pluses for me: beautiful art style. Definitely closer to the Wind Waker-esque visuals that I love the most in the series. I'm glad they didn't go super photorealistic or anything like that, which might have been easy for them to kind of sway that way. And I feel like even maybe towards the initial announcement about it, maybe it felt more photorealistic to me than I thought the end product ended up being. I don't know if they made a switch anytime during the development of the game for like the graphics, but I thought I saw first off that they were going to go a little bit more towards photorealism graphics, but I'm glad they kept what they ended up with. Love the way it looks. I think it gives a lot of character to the game, which, I mean, that's almost what the series is known for, just having that kind of character in it. The environments, I think the environments were very vivid. I think it's easy to get lost in like the actual like nature of the game, which is, to me, the definition of a sandbox game. You want to just get thrown in and do your own thing, whether it's linear or whether it's open world, do what you want. I think if you're easily able to lose yourself in the game, then you're doing what you're supposed to do. And the puzzles. I think the puzzles were mostly fun, and opening up the area through the puzzles for the most part was my favorite part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I do that in every single one of these Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, any of these games where you have posts or fortresses or
towers.
something. That Horizon as well has the long necks in them.
Yeah.
I like any of those because not only does it give you more information about the map and you can have a better game plan of what you want to do, but I don't know, it's just like the whole discovery aspect and exploration, which are like the two big factors in this game. Some minuses for me. I think you spent way too much time out of the action in menus and whatever else. It was real chopped up to me, and I didn't like the pacing of it, even though this game is more set your own pace. I feel like breaking weapons and doing all this, like, this just took me out of it too much, which that's good for some people. Some people just want to lay back and just kind of float along with the tide or whatever you want to call it, just kind of just go with the flow. But like I wanted purpose and like a drive to do something. And I think maybe the menus bouncing in between those kind of took me out of it a lot. For me, it was a technical nightmare. Not that it couldn't run or couldn't play like some of these PC games or where some games can play on console, some can't on PC. Something you would probably hear Kellen mention if he were to talk about Nier. Something you heard me mention last year about Dishonored 2. Not that it couldn't play, I just felt like it hardly ever hit 30 frames for me. And this is the Switch version or the Wii U version. And I think it's best played in 720p handheld to me. Motion controls for the puzzles. That's why I said they're mostly fun.
Horrible.
The only thing I don't like
don't know why they're
in the puzzles are the motion controls.
Yeah.
And this is a Nintendo thing almost exclusively, but they really like to just like really force a gimmick in there as much as they try to hold back and say, here's our solid Zelda experience or Star Fox. Yeah, right. Zelda, Mario, whatever. Like, here's our experience, but there's this one little twist where we really got to force that gimmick in. It's almost like someone's getting paid just to make that one gimmick or something like that.
Yeah, every game that has motion controls,
I don't know why they can't leave it alone and just make it pure.
Definitely the weakest puzzles, for sure. It's not even close. The motion control's terrible.
They weren't very difficult either. Not that you have to be like a master puzzle solver or anything like that, but I don't know, like, I felt like maybe the difficulty could have spiked in some, but it was just kind of like straight across the board. Delta, or things they could have fixed, I think, for me to bump it up on the list. Menus were kind of clunky, and I think they could have been streamlined a little bit more. This really would have helped if they had kept sort of like the original line of thinking, like the Wii U version, where you can sit there and play on your controller, but you have sort of like the Wii U pad, and you can do the menu stuff from there, or maybe just, I don't know. I think they could have implemented that a little bit better. The weapon break system hurt the experience for me, so I don't know if they could have made better repair options for your weapons in-game, or just lose it altogether. I think polarized, just go one way or the other. I don't like where it ended up for me. That was another, like, took me out of the experience. Like, I don't know, you don't start with the Master Sword, so that sort of thing. And I think the music could have been more prominent for me.
Oh, for sure.
I'm used to maybe not orchestral, but just more resounding music from the game. I know they wanted to go a bit more atmospheric, and it shows, and maybe it helps in some areas, but I really could have used that classic Zelda experience along with the music to go with it. And I think that would have bumped it up a little bit for me.
It's fair. So that's your number 10.
Yes, sir.
Not your number 1.
Correct.
Man.
I'm going to have to repeat that in a minute, probably.
Number 9. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice calls itself a AAA indie game, and the love, care, and polish that they put into it shows. Senua is one of my favorite new video game characters, and perhaps my favorite character from 2017. She suffers from psychosis, and by virtue of controlling her, we get a taste of what it's like for her. From her unreliable directions and thought to the full 3D surround in the headphones constantly criticizing, provoking, or encouraging her, this game slowly but surely makes you fall down a rabbit hole with Senua as you partake in watching her on her journey. The world, mythology, and gameplay mechanics are just vessels to help tell Senua's story from Senua's perspective. Really like this game. Kind of kept it on the down low last week when I was talking about it, but to me, I said these walking simulator games, which is basically what this is, you need to finish them. Like, if you get halfway through them and you end, you don't have that payoff. You don't have that, that reward that you get to at the end. And I liked the ending of this game. I kind of knew where it was going, but just visually, it's so different than anything else that I've played that did, like, a realistic take. Because it's weird because it's realistic looking in that, they look like real characters and the places look real, but then there's this mystical, magical element to it on top of it that just is really captivating and interesting to watch, and it's almost like a horror movie at times.
Using the mythology really that they did really helped with that, because
they did a really good job.
There's not very better, I guess, like mythos options for you to get like real world and a mix with like fantasy, but not like all of a sudden elves and trolls are popping out of nowhere sort of thing. So that was a good choice by them to stick with that.
Yeah. So they had a lot of very video gamey things, as I like to call it. This door is locked. How do you get past this door? You got to go find this thing, and it opens the door, and you can move on. We've got about 40 of those in the game. Like, they had a lot of that. The combat, to me, was not the focus of the game. I do wish that there was a little more depth to the combat, but I didn't need, like, oh, you're upgrading your weapon and you're finding new swords and you're doing, like, I didn't need that. But I would have enjoyed if the combat just had a little bit more than basic moves, parrying attacks, and then a couple, like, I'll call them like secret things that you could do that were like, oh, that was cool.
Just variety, but not depth. Not where you have to have a skill tree.
Yeah, basically. You don't need a skill tree for this game. That's not the point of the game. The point is to tell you Senua's story, which it did a very good job with. I liked the whole rot mechanic where you start out, your hand is sort of rotting. Yep. Every time you fail or die in combat, it spreads a little bit higher, and if it reaches your head, your save gets deleted to put this sort of tense pressure on you to perform better, and it does help. Like, to be honest, this game had the best walking across a pole mechanic I've ever used.
That's fair.
Where, like, if there's a plank and you're walking across it, you do that in a million video games. This is the first video game where I was like, I might fall. Like, I might mess this up. Because it's not just this like generic animation where this is the falling animation and this is the walking animation. She looks like she's struggling
and, like,
with
the controller shakes a little bit when you're
and
to one side.
She's leaning and she's trying to keep her balance the whole time, and it puts you off balance, and the camera's always just askew a little bit for doing it. So I enjoyed a lot of the stuff like that. The game, obviously, like I said, is beautiful. It's a very unique art style. It mixed live action and 3D, and it wasn't annoying. Like, it was totally reasonable, the way that they used it. I think Melina Juergens deserved her Best Performance Award. Absolutely. She did a great job.
Especially for showing up in the outfit.
Oh, yeah. She did a great job. I think they absolutely deserve their audio design award. Like, it was out of this world.
This is a headphones game for sure.
Yeah, even when you start it up, it's like play this with headphones or don't play the game. Like, honestly, it's a little what's that called? SMR, where people like whisper to you.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it's a little bit like that. The game. There's a lot of that going on that makes you feel uncomfortable. It's the point. Yeah, but, like, the hairs kind of stand up on the back of your neck because it does feel like people are whispering in your ear and they're walking
sometimes
around
when you're
you
screwing up and stuff like that, it feels like if you had some guys around you, like, oh, look at this guy, he's lost or he's stupid, he doesn't know what he's doing.
The first one that got me, like, I was like, oh, okay, this is a little gimmicky. Is this going to get annoying? Yeah. You know what I mean? But the one that really got me and got me into it was I was lost and I was trying to figure out where to go, and one of the voices in the back right's just like, she's lost. She's lost, and they all start laughing, and I was like, man, you guys are jerks. Yeah. So I really liked that. And then my own another complaint that I have, and I'm not sure if this counts as a complaint. This is a Norse mythology game.
Yeah.
Isn't hell spelt with one L in Norse mythology?
Yeah.
Yeah, they spell it with two in the game. And I don't know why.
The person is spelled with one L, but
I thought the place was.
But
too.
I think you can.
I Googled it.
You can swap Helheim, which is the hell you're thinking of. I think you can do two L's, but I've always seen it with one.
I was just curious. I know they were trying to be cute because they did Heavenly Sword and it's like Heavenly Sword,
Okay.
Hellblade.
Yeah.
Cute. But that's just a little side note. So yeah, number 9, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
That was the game that got me saying this year. I don't know the difference anymore between AAA and
It's
indie.
great.
I mean, that they are the
great.
one that kind of threw that title out there. But yeah, that was the one. Number 9, not to be confused with number 2. Number 9, Super Mario Odyssey.
Oh boy, we about to fight.
Positives for me. Each one of the worlds and zones, they're called zones or worlds. I call them worlds.
They're called kingdoms.
Kingdoms, not either of the two. Each one of the kingdoms felt really inspired. I like them all. I like there's like a huge contrast between going from like the ice world to the volcanic world to the woodlands to the metro.
Not a lot of just like grass worlds, which seems to happen a lot in Mario stuff. It's like, this is the grass world. What's this? Grass, but there's a little more mud in this one.
And they all made sense too, whether it was the metro level where it's more vertical, you're jumping up and you're getting flung places and launched, with the ice where you're sliding and the whole mechanic don't freeze in the water. Yeah, there's the don't drown meter, but obviously if you stay in there too long, you'll freeze too. I liked how they all worked together, and like I said, that's what made it feel very inspired and not just like, here's like an ice skin, you're in the woods now, here's the volcano, sort of thing. I think it had a really great soundtrack for the game, for a Mario game too. The mid-game celebration is
Ooh, baby.
easily one of my favorite, and I know I'm not Super Mario fan, but is easily one of my favorite Mario experiences, memories, whatever you want to call it at this point. Really loved it. That was awesome. And this is me. I played it this past week. Obviously, no one, if they've watched this for a while, has heard me say, oh yeah, I played Super Mario Odyssey. I just handed it back right before the show because I played it all week. But yeah, I knew about the song just from the Game Awards and the performance of that. Knew about it a little bit beforehand, but I didn't know anything about the big celebration, fireworks,
awesome.
extravaganza. That was sweet. Even someone like me, I can't downplay how cool that was.
It's so it's an ode to Mario and Mario fans, like a lot of the game, without feeling pandery, which is a hard line to balance. But
it is, especially when it's like Nintendo games too, where you're a little more acclimated to, hey, remember that time, 20 years ago? So also, final big positive, at least for it, I think it's the best performing game on the system so far. Slowdowns and anything like that are non-existent for the most part. I didn't even notice anything, and I played it both handheld and I preferred it on the big screen though. Minuses or negatives for me. The run around and like collect thing objectives gets kind of stale for me. It ends up feeling kind of shallow after a while. I don't think there's any great control scheme. Every method I tried felt like you were sacrificing something when you went to the Joy-Cons or the controller or whatever you wanted.
Control scheme like controller.
Yeah. There wasn't like a best fit option. It was what are you willing to give up sort of option to me. I really like the Pro Controller, but I also like some of the moves with the hat where you like the more radial moves where you can cover around you or hook shots and stuff like that. And those are significantly harder on a Pro Controller. So
it's true.
I don't know. I tried all the methods that they at least mentioned, and that's the one I ended up with. And it was like, give and take, basically. And final one, I think is, and this is just me. I think I'm just kind of burnt out on the Mario story and adventure. I know we came back to the Peach and Bowser thing now. I know they've gone to different stories in different places and other games, and I know spin-offs is really their avenue for, hey, let's explore like a side story or a different method of the game. I feel like I want the main Mario team, to put as much heart and soul into a mainstay Mario game that's just different, way different, and go with that. I don't think it's anything to do with the gameplay elements. I think they're all there. I like those, and I like what they keep adding to it with the hat in this one. I don't think that's what's lacking. I think it's just not even locations, because they went to a lot of places here, but I don't just do something new. I don't know what to tell you as far as...
They tried space.
Yeah.
They tried galaxy.
They They did
That's pretty
space. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like I'm just burnt out on this formula, which, to their credit, there's no real sense for them to go off the beaten path and try something completely new, especially with their first Mario game on this brand new exciting system that's, helps sells the system. But, I don't know what they need to do for someone like me, which they probably don't care about, but to be completely honest. But I don't know. I want something new. I kind of liked what Metro was doing as far as some of the new things. Metro, the Kingdom in the game.
I thought you were talking about...
the game Metro?
No, I thought you were talking about the studio that did Metroid Prime.
No.
To Metroid. I was like, Mario Prime wouldn't work very well.
I kind of like some of the new things that the Metro Kingdom in the game kind of brought. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can get along with this. Delta, things they could have made better. I think the side objectives were the most fun part of the game for me. So I would like alternate ways to progress the game that's not pure collection based.
Okay. I was going to say, there's alternate ways
you can
to
do
progress,
this, or you can just collect the moons and go. Like, you can kind of have your
own. Do the story or the moons.
I liked the aesthetic of all the different outfits. I really liked the aesthetic. Whether it was going to the beach, now I got my Hawaiian shirt and trousers, or I go to the safari, and now I got my hat and my jacket. I just wish they gave benefits or, like, abilities for using them.
Yeah, I thought that was strange. Like, I didn't mind that they didn't, but I for sure thought they would. Yeah. Like, just naturally, I was like, oh, cool, I got the clothing, the warm clothes. Now I can go in the freezing water. Oh, I died.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the most they let you do is just access certain. There'll be a person like, you don't have swimming trunks on. It's hot out
You
here.
aren't an Eskimo.
Yeah. And yeah, those are the main. Like I just said, it's not gameplay elements that need to change, but I do wish I could have access to the cape and the raccoon and the fireball and stuff. Like, I know it felt like 99% about the hat. And I wanted some of the other stuff in there as well, I guess. But maybe that's a little bit greedy. But
you want it to be different, but you want all the old stuff back.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. The gameplay elements aren't what I like. I love the gameplay elements, flying around. Like, give me the Super Mario 3 and the hat, and maybe put it on like a wheel where I can rotate. Maybe I've got the hat now, or maybe the cape now, so I can swap in between, sort of thing. It's not gameplay that's not doing it for me for the most part. It's just like everything else, like the story and just like purpose. Like, what am I doing here, sort of thing. But yeah, definitely enjoyed it though. I didn't think, to go back to Zelda or Mario, I didn't think either of these would end up in my top 10, because I played a bunch of games this year and liked a lot of games. And I know I held off on Mario to the very end, but I actually liked it more than I thought I would. And I don't know, I might buy it for the Switch. I know it kind of sucks to get 100-something moons on someone else's game, but like the progress won't carry over.
No, it will.
It will?
On your Switch, yeah. Especially if cloud saving comes out next week, like it's rumored.
So that wouldn't hurt as bad if I've already got all the progress.
It's tied to the Switch itself, not the cartridge.
Okay. Yeah, number 9.
Number 8. Doki Doki Literature Club. Doki Doki Literature Club parades itself as a cliche anime dating sim, but upon diving in, you quickly realize that DDLC is way more than what it appears on the surface level. Playing with the genre is one of my favorite things a medium can do, and Doki Doki plays with it 3 times over, with twists and turns slowly evolving the experience and turning it on its own head. Once you finish, you can never look at the game, its characters, or any lines of dialogue from the game the same way again. Yeah, it's important to note that with these Game of the Year stuff, we're talking about the games, but we're going to get into mild spoilers, maybe medium spoilers. I don't want to be like, and then the ending or anything like that. But I want to be able to talk about
spoil. But
I want to be able to talk about maybe a certain scenario or something about the things. And this is really the first one I want to drop that for, because I'm not going to spoil a bunch, but I just want to throw that out there. I liked that the characters were these tropey anime trope characters, and then as you hang out with them more and you talk to them, they give a backstory for kind of like their reasoning for being the tropey anime trope characters, which was something that I thought was kind of unique and kind of an interesting way to go about it. I feel like people have that saying, oh, I remember, I think it was Silent Hill Shattered Memories, or maybe even Until Dawn, they do the game plays you as much as you play the game type thing. And I really feel like this is one of those games that does that. It does adapt to your choices, and it does change depending on what you do. And it could change drastically, or it could change so subtly that you don't even, notice anything. And it encourages you to experiment with different things through this change, which I thought was really nice. I liked, my favorite thing about a game like this was, I was like, I have an idea, and I try it, and I was like, oh, it worked, or oh, it did something, or I really like that, as opposed to being like, I have a cool idea and it doesn't work, and that's something that Zelda kind of borrows too. I'm like, I wonder if I can. Oh, I can. Cool. Yeah. And this game did that too, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And this is an important point. This is a PC exclusive game, and Kevin McManus is recommending it. So it's got to be something special, because I don't visit the PC very often.
There's an asterisk there, and PC only for a reason.
Yeah, but there's a couple games like that. Like there was Her Story I jumped into because I was like, that's a PC game. I didn't end up loving that game, but every once in a while, when there's a PC game that everybody's raving about, and I know it's like PC only, I'm like, okay, I'll hop in and see what all the fuss is about. And what the fuss was about with this game was totally worth it. I'm glad I've played it. I've played through it more than once now. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So number 8, Doki Doki Literature Club.
Very nice. Number 8, now we can kind of get back on normal track, at least for expectations. Number 8, Horizon Zero Dawn. Positives for the game. Aloy was a great character. I like Aloy. I think Sony can go a lot of places with her, and I think she's going to stick around for a bit.
Oh, yeah. Horizon 2, in the works, for sure.
And if they do any sort of All-Stars sort of spin-off, anything like that.
She'll be a poster character.
Obviously showing up in Monster Hunter World. She's already getting kind of the VIP treatment, and she's only just shown up, sort of thing. Forgot her voice actress, but she did a good job.
Ashley Birch.
Yeah, that's right. Thought she did a really good job. And yeah, she was the biggest point of the game for me as far as characters go. Awesome environment. Really liked the environment. I think the enemy classes were real fun. They were real different too. And obviously a big portion of this game, since you're using bow and arrow, are weak points on enemies. So not only are you having to use precision, do I need to knock that thing off his head? Do I need to shoot his back or his legs, sort of thing? But these are all like saber-toothed tigers and things charging at you. So yeah, you get a little bit of slowdown mechanics if you spec correctly and stuff like that. But it's not easy to shoot the charging thing exactly where you want it and to slow it down, instead of, you can go from maybe 2 shots to kill it to 100 shots, and it's still bucking and trying to ram you or fly down and drop stuff on, whatever the enemy classes. I think there's a lot of variety, and that was cool because I had to go in, like if I was just kind of running around up a hill, I was like, saw this patch of animal robots over here, I would have to, kind of come up with a strategy and not just wing it.
The enemy variety is a good point. That's something that I never really thought of. I never was like, man, except for maybe those, I think they're called Watchers, the ones that patrol.
Little eyeball.
Yeah, dudes, they kind of patrol and alert the other ones.
Yeah.
Minus them, I never was like, man, another robot dinosaur. Yeah. I was always like, ooh, what's this one do? Oh, this one can fly. Yeah. It was always interesting.
And I think it has some of the most impressive visuals for a console game.
Absolutely.
At this point in time. Negatives. My big one that I've mentioned to you before, and maybe a couple other people, I don't know what this game is the master of. This is like a classic jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. It's like if you just looked across the board and almost every category, it's just average or right where it needs to be. It doesn't peak in some places and then fall off down here. It's not like the soundtrack is trash, and it's but the visuals though, there's no up and down. It's just straight across. Yeah. So if you think of an EKG, it's just it's good. It was a great game. I think it could have killed it in 2016 as far as comparing against its competitors, and maybe it would have won Game of the Year that year.
Nope.
But I don't know. It didn't. A lot of these games on the table and a lot of these games on our list really knocked it out of the park in one or more areas, and this one just
It was just good at everything.
No real home runs
And
and
that's it.
grand slams, but a lot of doubles, a lot of triples.
I don't get that.
A lot of singles and strikeouts. That's soccer. Don't worry about it. Another negative, I don't think they nailed the pacing at all. And the game doesn't really remember what you completed. With games like this, you go out into the wild and now you have objective A, B, C, and D. So if you do A, B, and C, and D, it plays kind of naturally, and it's like, okay, it sort of lends itself to a story. But if you decide to do DCBA or anything other than A, B, C, D, it feels janky and out of whack, because if you do the fourth thing, then go back to the first thing, the game doesn't remember that, and it doesn't go, oh yeah, you already know this because you kind of skipped ahead, but there's these guys attacking, blah, blah, blah. It'll start from scratch like you never did anything. And you're like, oh, who are these guys? Yeah, the ones you just killed 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. I like, as just an aside, I always, and if there's a game like this, let me know. But I always thought it'd be cool to have an RPG where there's multiple cutscenes that are the same cutscene, but they play differently depending on what level you are.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, if you walk in, the cutscene plays, and, like, the enemy's, like, cowering in fear. But if you were level 10 instead of level, 25, the enemy would be all cocky. And if you were about even, like, I thought it'd be cool if there was a game that does that. If there is, let me know. But
and I also think in this game, too, you'll hear me say this a lot as far as negatives in this list, even though these are the top 10, way too much time spent out of action. I think crafting arrows and the fast travel system and everything else was like a real chore by the end of it. I know you can increase inventory size and stuff like that to make it less frequent, and you can get fast travel packs that make the traveling a little faster and a little more consistent, but it just, there's so many times where I was like, oh man, it's swooping down, boom, 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 3 arrows, and then I'm out. And I'm just like, hold on, pause, go craft some arrows, and like, I'm back. Okay, now let's finish you, sort of thing. It's just kind of weird. I wish there's like an auto system or something going on. It's like, if you've got 500 branches in your inventory and you run out, maybe it takes a minute and you sit there and kind of stumble around or something like that. Maybe it punishes you in game if you use it, but to just completely pause all combat and go to the menu, let me craft 60 arrows all of a sudden, and then go back into the fight. It's just anticlimactic sometimes, and I prefer the games where you can't pause during combat and do stuff like that. Like maybe you can pause to stop the game, but you can't go into inventory and swap things around and stuff like that. It'll just be like, no, not in the middle of combat. So I don't know. It was just kind of weird that it happened a lot like that. Kind of took me out of it.
We are so different. It's so crazy. We don't agree on anything.
I think some deltas or things they could have gotten better. Controls really could have used some tightening on it. I think this game would feel much better on PC, I think. Another one, the visuals. Why lock it at 30 frames? I think this game would look much better on PC and flow better on PC. And I think the story could use a little bit of work. I think the game could have benefited from being a lot more linear and not open world sandbox.
I agree. I think this could have been an awesome 8-hour game.
8 hour, 10, 20, but like I feel like maybe they should have gated you more or forced you to do things along a certain path, or just made it a linear game.
Hey, we agreed. Never mind. Take it all back.
I usually don't say. I usually like to just take the hinges off and just let you do whatever you want to do. But this one felt it's really hard to do narrative focused game and open world. Like you really have to, like I said, set gates in motion or do some sort of events where it locks you out of playing around in the sandbox for a little bit. You have to do this. You have to do this. Mm-hmm. Okay, now back into the wild, sort of thing. And I think this game could have used it more so than others.
I like it. I like it a lot. That was your number 8.
Mm-hmm.
My number 7. Gravity Rush 2. Gravity Rush 2 delivered a sequel that took the DNA of the first game and expanded it in every aspect. While to me, normally this hurts a game because it causes them to feel bloated and slightly lifeless, with Gravity Rush 2, it felt right in line with the first game. This is the best game of the year that isn't on any lists. Music is amazing, visuals are outstanding, the gameplay is enjoyable from start to finish, and most importantly, Gravity Rush 2 delivered on its promise of tying up loose ends and open-ended questions from the first game throughout its campaign and its DLC, Arc of Time. While Gravity Rush 2 didn't outdo the original, it stands toe-to-toe with it as one of my favorite games on PlayStation 4. So this is another January game, I believe.
Yes.
I got a couple Januaries on here. But yeah, Gravity Rush 2, I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I actually ended up platinuming the game before it even came out because I found a store that was selling it a couple days early, and I rushed over there and went and got it, and I went through it.
Not the easiest game to platinum, from what I remember you talking about.
It's kind of a pain. But anyway, there's a lot of they added a lot of side quests and stuff because they made it a much bigger open world, and that's fine because that stuff is optional. It's not like you need to do those side quests. I chose to, but a lot of those side quests are optional. But yeah, this game is beautiful. I actually think it's kind of criminal it didn't get nominated for music, at least in the Game Award nominations. Like, I definitely think it should stand right there next to Nier and stand right there next to Persona. Like, it is a fantastic French-inspired soundtrack that is really good. And visually, it's got this watercolor painting look to it, similar almost to Zelda. And Zelda was nominated for visual as well. And I think this is just the Zelda visuals, and they look better, in all honesty. So I find it strange that it wasn't nominated for those things. And that reason is just not enough people played it. That's what it comes down to. They kind of revisit a lot of the old characters while introducing new characters, and the old characters feel like they've progressed. This doesn't take place 2 minutes after the last game. A lot of time has passed, and the characters have progressed as people. They've moved on to other things. They're doing stuff, and you got to kind of do the get the band back together, one more go type situation. They introduce all these new characters, and I like every single new character that they introduce. Their character designs are insanely good. This game is actually, and I didn't know this at the time, I did a review on the first one, but this game series is actually done by the guy who does Silent Hill.
There you go.
Who started Silent Hill, and I didn't know that at the time, but there's monsters in this game, and you can tell the influence there from that. So that was nice to find out. It has a fantastic final boss battle, which is usually a downside with games. A lot of times games are great, and then the final boss is like this wear and tear of grinding down something that has way too much health and is way too hard.
Hard to do a good final boss, especially with games where, whether it's like a sequel or if it's something where it's level based and experience based, because you feel like you're way up here and he didn't catch up, or hey, here's
tough.
a big bullet sponge, or
it's definitely tough.
Body bag, meat bag sort of thing. So,
but I like this one mostly because it used scale, it used lore, the past events tied into this final boss battle, and it introduced it forced you to use all of your gameplay mechanics that you have been learning up until that point. And when you hit on a final boss, it feels so good to finish it. You're like, that was an awesome final boss. When you strike out on a final boss, it is just... It leaves you soured on the game a little bit when you finish it. You're like, ugh, all right, well, whatever. The story went with a little bit more of a not social commentary, but it went a little bit deeper, a little bit more realistic, had more of something to say with itself, which I enjoyed. And this is just a this is Infamous. This is that style game. It is a superhero game, except this is an original superhero with the very original powers, gravity powers, which is just not something that you see. So yeah, really enjoyed it. I like everything that they did. They did add some mechanics that weren't like groundbreaking. They added this lunar and Jupiter mechanic where you're normal and then you can make yourself lunar, which makes you super light. And you can basically jump super high, and things are like your attacks are faster, and you can get away and kind of teleport dodge. Or you can do Jupiter, which grounds you, and you can barely fly. But like if you're holding something and you're getting hit, you don't drop it, which you would in the other ones, and it changes some of your attacks up. But it's basically it's just weight. It's literally just the weight of the gravity on you. But like they added some things like that were like, oh, this is fine. But it doesn't, did this need to be here?
Yeah.
Probably not. But it is interesting for stuff like speedruns, where people are switching between these modes quickly to, like, they'll turn to lunar and jump really high and then turn to Jupiter and fall really fast because it's, you know.
Yeah.
And so they do stuff like that. That's neat. Just an unfortunate footnote for this game. The servers go offline on the 18th of January. And they have an online system where they're treasure hunts, which I thought were really cool. There's these treasure chests that are hidden. They're random. They spawn random times a day in random places. And if you find one, you can take a picture, or like you can take selfies and stuff in the game. But you can take a picture of it and send it online, and somebody can find that picture and use it to find that treasure chest. And if they do, you get rewarded this currency called Dusty Coins. And you get like 30 of them for doing that. You get a couple, like 100 or something if you challenge somebody to a race and they beat your time and then you beat their time kind of thing. But you need 6,000 of them to unlock everything there is. And there's alternate outfits for Cat. There's a amulet that allows you to not use any gravity. So like you basically have infinite power, which is cool. Like they have stuff
Seems
like
helpful.
that. Yeah, well, the thing is, by the time you get it, you're done with the game,
Yeah.
so it's a little actually not helpful. But they have stuff like that. But yeah, the servers are going offline in a week, so if you have any interest in that, hop on and do
Hurry.
it. I'm actually trying to grind through it. I'm about halfway through getting the stuff, because I don't know what they're going to do. They might just make it all free in the PlayStation Store or something like that, and that's fine. But I would like to have them, just if I can get them, so that's what I've been working on. But yeah, number 7, Gravity Rush 2, the game that I really feel like if any game's been robbed of, I don't think it would win, but if any game's been robbed of like nominations for stuff, I really do think it's this game.
My number 7, Doki Doki Literature Club.
I like it.
My positives for this game, I think it's got an awesome narrative that's sort of like you're alluding to, really flips the genre on its head, and I can always appreciate, even if it's a genre I don't like, whether it's like a platformer that maybe did this, anything like that, but dating sims, sure, I'd play them. What this game actually is underneath all the, I guess, the curtain that it pulls out from under you.
Why is the curtain under me?
It's a long curtain. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Just checking.
But what the game actually is...
This should really be a rug.
What the game actually is, I enjoy that too. So I like anytime they, pull the wool out from over my eyes. There you go.
Okay.
I gave this game my game narrative of the year. That's how much I really like the narrative of this game.
I appreciate that.
Great characters all around. When you have these small, compact sort of games, it really helps when everyone's kind of hitting their marks. And like you said, they were pretty much, I won't say advertised because no one really advertised this game, but when you go into the game, they are very much tropes, and they have solid reasonings for being tropes, and they fit those tropes well, and just like the genre, everything gets kind of flipped on its head. I think there's a someone for everyone in this game, and not just like clearly best girl. Maybe people can fight about that, but I think there's a good option anywhere you tend to go.
Yeah, for sure.
I also put in my positives, at least, I think it has greater implications into further titles and like cool backstories that you could do with these characters. They put this game out for free. I can definitely say that, and it feels like, maybe they can go somewhere with these cool characters. It wasn't just some guy was bored sort of thing and just wanted to put a game out and didn't think he could sell it. I think this game is like oozing with complexity and detail that's not all there on the surface, what you would expect from a dating sim. My negatives, honestly, I'm not going to be too harsh on a free game. And for what this is. I think the free nature of the game kind of limits the scope of what you can do, obviously. It kind of narrows the gameplay because obviously you don't have a team working on this for years and years and years. I wanted it to be a bit longer than what it was. I don't like really telling people how long the game is going into it. You can finish it in a night, though, if you really sit down and just go through it. I think also for me as a consumer who doesn't mind putting a little bit of money into the games, especially a free game, there wasn't a nice selection of like paid content and like bonuses. I think there's maybe a merchandise store online.
There's a merchandise store and there's a fan pack that gives you the game and like the soundtrack and stuff like that. The thing is, I actually really like the merchandise and I would like to support them.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep my eye on them. The company, what is it, Team Salvano? Something like that.
Yeah, I forget.
I'm going to keep my eye on them, and maybe if they put out something, it's similar to what I did with Drinkbox with Guacamelee. I got that for free on Plus, and then I was like, oh, can't wait for their next game, and I got their next game.
Same thing I did with
away.
Rocket League when it hit all these other systems and Switch and whatever else. So, Deltas, what they could have made better about the game, all of these are going to fall under the larger development team and more resources category. Like I said, it's free. Yeah, you can still have criticisms, and they can do this better, they can do that better sort of thing, but obviously if there's just a handful of guys working on it, I'm not going to beat them up too much. So, number 7, Doki Doki.
Number 6, What Remains of Edith Finch. The most uplifting, vibrant, imaginative game I have ever played about such a dreadful, tragic, and disturbing story. Edith Finch is a collection of microgames with varying gameplay mechanics, genres, and themes that translate into one narrative about a cursed Finch family and their untimely deaths. Nearly impossible not to finish in one sitting, Edith Finch found a way to not only make a walking simulator that tells a compelling story, but also put solid gameplay mechanics into it, which other walking simulators have been criticized for lacking. To me, Edith Finch stands as one of the best the genre has to offer. So this is another one of those. I'm going to go into some spoiler stuff if you don't want to know anything about this game. But Edith Finch, it is this walking simulator story. You go into this house, you're exploring, what's going on. And then you go into a room, and there's rooms of all the kids in the house. And basically the idea is when one of the members dies, which they always do because they're this cursed family, they, instead of moving their stuff out, they just board up their room, and they're done with that family, and then they build a new room in their house. So their house is all like this weird, disjointed looking thing with all these extra rooms that are not really well built and all this stuff. And you go into these rooms, and when you go into the rooms, you interact with objects, and it triggers basically their death. You get to see how they died.
Yeah.
And they range from kind of realistic and plausible to super imaginative and creative and out there. And they a lot of times jump genres. So like some of them are still walking simulator type things, but some of them are just different games entirely. My favorite one was Barbara's, which was a comic book. And you open this comic book, and it's a Tales from the Crypt style comic book, and you play the panels of the comic book, so the screen is actually panning with the panels until you finish what you need to do on each one.
All right.
You go into the basement, it turns into a horror story. John Carpenter's Halloween music starts playing. You're finding a weapon to defend yourself. It's like really, really awesome and creative. There's one that's a top-down RPG that requires you to use both sticks to do different things at once to affect one thing that's happening on the other side of the screen. It like splits the screen in half, and you're doing two things at once. There's just a whole bunch of these awesome creative stories that are all tied into this. And like I said, it is one narrative, and it is a walking simulator by genre, but they did find a way to weave gameplay into all this, which, like I said, is something that a lot of people who don't like walking simulators they're like, there's no game, it's just a story, just tell me what happens type thing. And it's like, well, this one you need to play. You need to do the orchestra to the baby drowning. Like, it is just these horrible, horrible scenarios that are done so beautifully and so well. And it also has one particular moment with a musical score and just a little hint of what it's talking about that is particularly awesome for fans of the Giant Sparrow, which is the company that made the game. They like birds a lot. So, number 6, What Remains of Edith Finch.
Even though I covered a bunch of games and my bought, played, watched, streamed, whatever, I feel like that was probably the biggest thing that I missed out on.
Mine was Pyre.
Probably want to go through and watch a stream. I don't think I necessarily care about playing it, even though I know
I did get no, I'm probably not going to open it. Never mind. Disregard that.
Point is, I probably need to see it through, sort of thing. It seems
really
like
good.
Something that is worth investing time in. I just don't know if I want to actually play it.
Yeah, it's only like 2.5 hours long too. It's not long at all.
Something that's a little longer than 2.5 hours. Number, what is this? 6? Yeah, number 6. Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Positives for the game. Fantastic pacing and a nice blend of cinematic and shooter gameplay. When you get into these sorts of games and you want to go cutscene, back to action, cutscene, back to... Like, it can be a little jarring, some things cannot feel even. A knock against Horizon that I've already mentioned about that is that you can be right in the thick of it. You can be climbing, jumping around, fall, land, and you're in cutscene. And it's like, how did I end up way over there when I was obviously right here, sort of thing. Like, it doesn't do that. Like, you get to the end of a level, cutscene, or you get to the end of an area, cutscene, so it's nice, it flows well, and it feels more like an action movie sort of thing. The transitions and the cutscenes were a pleasure to witness. The narrative was equal parts hilarious, intense, and really disgusting. I enjoyed most, if not all, of the cast that went along with that. The soundtrack, insanely good. Same composer as Doom. He composed the first batch of Wolfenstein, the newer Wolfensteins, but I feel like Doom, he just found his place, and he carried that right into Wolfenstein because it felt a little bit more like it, but with like some Wolfenstein-esque feel into it. So it wasn't just like Doom 2, but you could tell that the music ramped up substantially in this game compared to Old Blood and New Order. Speaking of those, negatives, I enjoyed the setting a little less than I did with Old Blood and New Order. I prefer the more classic Castle Wolfenstein feel.
Yeah.
Monsters and scientists and spooky stuff. This one was way more of a alternate history, we'll say 50s, 60s, something like that. But the Nazis won, basically, World War II sort of thing. I don't like manually having to pick up weapons and ammo. It's a small complaint,
No,
but
I get that.
But as often as you're picking up these things, I would like them to just suck straight up into my hands or inventory bag, whatever. The augmentations, and this is getting a little deeper into the game. About the second half of the game, you start getting augmentations, and you can choose your path, sort of thing. Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? You have options. The gameplay on those was a little lacking, though. For the most part, it's basically, we are going to give you obstacles, and do you want to choose option A to get through the obstacles, option B, C, D? Whatever you choose, you can always just go a different path to get around the obstacle. It doesn't feel like it really catered to the options that you chose. You can bash through the wall, or you can go through the pipe, sort of like Deus Ex sort of things. Mm-hmm. But you don't spec a certain way to do that in those games. But in this one, you do. And it felt like, sort of like you were talking about with Gravity Rush 2, it's a system and a sequel, and did it really need it, sort of thing. I feel like it was just kind of tacked on to fit the story, but you could have just had the goofy story. Like, no one's going to knock if some crazy thing happened. That's all that happens in this game is crazy stuff. Delta, things they could have fixed a little better, or fixed to make it a little bit better. Bring the series back to the classic science, monsters, yet keep the Nazi stuff in there, obviously. Gotta punch and shoot Nazis if it's Wolfenstein. But more like the doom and gloom sort of stuff that Old Blood and New Order had. I would like them to make it a bit more on rails, and this is going back to weapon pickups and stuff like that. I like it to be a little bit more on rails, a little bit more like Doom. Obviously, these are the same company making these for the most part. You don't want them to be side by side where you can't really tell what's what, but I want it to go back to kind of the origin or origins of these games where they were pretty similar. Obviously, Doom is more space, big mutant monsters, and this is more evil scientists did this, or super soldiers sort of thing. And I think my last thing that they could have made better, increase the quality of the side objectives and the submissions. I really didn't care about going into some of the side stuff. Usually I want to 100% the game, and not like collect all the stuff, but like 100% it as in, I did all this guy's missions. This person asked me to do something. Okay. And in this game, it was just like, I'll just stick to the main story. I don't really care what you want, sort of thing. So I feel like they can increase the quality of that because, I mean, this is very narrative-focused game now, and it's very cinematic-heavy, story-centric. Like, make me care about some of this stuff on the side instead of just going all in on the main story. And that's my number 6.
We're in the real meat and potatoes now.
The big leagues.
Oh, yeah. The number 5. My number 5 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild did what no open-world game has ever done to me. Made me want to explore the open world and not just walk straight to the objective and maybe stumble on something along the way. I explored at my own pace and found wonder in the things I found and the ways I found them. The real star of the show is the physics system, which helped craft your own personal stories, as puzzles technically had dozens and dozens of solutions, depending on what you had equipped with you at the time of finding them. So far, I've been able to correctly predict how most Zelda games will be looked back on after we're past the launch hype. This is one of the rare times I can say this game will be remembered in the same breath as Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past. I think when Wind Waker came out, I was like, oh, this is cool. And everybody hated it. I'm like, no, guys, this is cool. And people were like, oh, Wind Waker. Twilight Princess comes out. Everybody's like, oh, this is so awesome. Realistic Zelda. And then years later, they're like, it's just Ocarina of Time. Yeah. But look at you know. Skyward Sword, I really liked that one. But I was like, nobody's going to like this game. There's absolutely no way. And lo and behold, now people hate that Zelda game, you know?
Finicky fan base.
Yeah. This one's it. This is the one that people like and people are going to like in the future. Absolutely. The only way I could see that not happening in it is if they make one that's very similar in the next 4 years or whatever that just does everything better. And I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, I really liked they figured it out how to make me enjoy an open world game, and that is no story. That's how you do it. My big complaints about open world games are all have to do with, and mostly they settle with Western RPGs, because JRPGs do this a bit, but Western RPGs take themselves more seriously to me. They like to tell this more serious story. It's grounded, usually like they don't have these crazy physics stuff going on. Like Mass Effect has some space mumbo jumbo, but like they try to ground it in a reality. Whereas JRPGs kind of don't, and I think that's part of the reason that they kind of get a pass from me for some of the stuff that they have. Well, this game was just like, there's no story, so you don't need to worry about it at all.
To be fair, I guess the more realistic that they make it, the more conflicted you are about, but the big bad guy's over here doing this. Why do I need to run over to this town and collect food or something?
It bothers me a lot. But one of my favorite memories and the time that I realized this game was really special was when I got to one of the dungeons, the Divine Beast, these things that you go into, and they're these big elaborate things, and the whole point of it was like rotating these rooms to align a fire with a target, and then you had to shoot an arrow through the fire to burn down the door. And I had a sword that was a fire sword that I picked up off some guy that I probably shouldn't have been able to kill, but I had at it, and I kept going and I kept going, and I just walked up to the door and hit it, and it went do 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 do, and I was like, all right, next part. There's all these things of people with electricity swords, and they're just dropping them on the ground next to all their metal objects and activating 2 switches without any of the things that you needed to activate the switches. Like, I love that stuff. The fact that, once again, it allows you to experiment and to play, and you go, this won't work, and then, it worked. It actually did something. And like I said, the removal of the story is really what it took for me. Not only that, but they got rid of the HUD in the way that there's not, hey, there's a guy here with a little arrow over his head. That means he's a side quest if you want to talk to him. And there's a dog here. No, it's like you walk up and you throw something and the dog goes and gets it. And then that started a side quest somehow. Like they got around the daunting Assassin's Creed, though I know they actually tried to fix this in Origins. But the Assassin's Creed Ubisoft style thing where there's just a map with points everywhere. Yeah. Instead, you tell us what's important. We don't tell you what's important. You climb a tower, you can see everything from the tower that, is important. We made it look interesting. You look at it with your binoculars and pin it, and it puts a marker on there, and it's actually pretty impressive that it goes right where you were looking. I don't actually know how they did that so well. But it puts the marker there, and then you go explore that at your own pace when you're ready. Like, the game isn't telling you this is the important thing. You're telling the game this is the thing I think is important.
It's one of those don't have to worry about pacing if there is no story.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah, and like that's literally it. Just remove the
Yeah.
story, and it solved all my issues. And you can't do that with a lot of games. Like you can't put out Horizon and be like, "Yeah, it's this cool game with robot dinosaurs and this chick," and they're like, "Oh, what's the story?" And they're like, "No, it's a cool game with a robot." Like that doesn't work. But with Nintendo franchises and old franchises in general, you can just not have a story, and that actually works. I actually like the weapons breaking system. I know you said that you weren't a big fan of it, but it forced you to pick your fights and to value things that you picked up. Instead of just being like, oh, I run through, kill all this stuff, level up. Like, you don't level up.
Yeah.
You're not a character that levels up. You don't get stronger. You just get better at the game. And you learn how to dodge, and you learn how to sword fight better, and you learn how to pick your battles.
Yeah.
And sure, you find weapons that are more powerful, but then you don't even want to use those on those weaker guys because you don't want to break your more powerful weapon on something.
Yeah, I think
meh.
I just wanted it at one end or the other, not in the middle where it landed. So.
The fact that you can climb everything, everybody makes a big deal out of it. It is a big deal. I don't think it's as big a deal as people make, but the fact that you can go, there's the top of that mountain, I'm going to figure out a way to climb up it. And you climb and you climb and you climb and you almost make it and you fall and you die. And then it pretty quickly loads you back in and you're like, all right, this time I'm going to go to the left. Ooh, there's a little ledge I can recharge on. And it always feels like you just make it, like just in time. And I think that's because they did the leap mechanic where while you're climbing, you can leap and it takes a chunk of your stamina. But since you know how much stamina you have and you can kind of guesstimate, they make it so that you want to get up there fast. So you're doing the leap, and every time you have just enough stamina to climb up that ledge. And it
or if you just spend all
really
of your puzzle rewards on stamina.
And then you die to everything when it looks at you. I think that this map was expertly and lovingly designed. There's secrets hiding literally everywhere, and there's stuff that, similar to kind of like The Witness, it's stuff that you don't even think about until you find one. And then you go, oh, I passed like 27 of these. And you're like, oh, man. And then you go and like you do something else, and you're like, oh, I passed like 27 of these too. It's just hidden in plain sight style thing, which I appreciate. And the fact that they were able to craft this map is huge. This map is giant.
Pretty big.
And the fact that they were able to handcraft it and make it feel, like a working world. It's not like No Man's Sky style thing where it's like, this doesn't geometry make sense. You know what I mean? So,
well, and in that
I
game too,
enjoy
it's like, here's another planet, or this one's just run that way 20 minutes and you'll be there.
You can go, you write your own story with this one, and that is the story of the game. You can go fight Ganon right at the start. I fought Ganon after 3 of the dungeons.
Yeah.
I went and I fought Ganon and kind of saw what it was about. And I had a hard time, and it didn't go very well. Like, I got him like half dead, and he killed me. And I was like, I'm going to come back later. And then I came back after I did a whole bunch more stuff, and I destroyed him. And I was like, oh, that was very rewarding. Like, they almost dare you to go try and fight Ganon and see what happens. So even though it is possible, it does kind of feel like they're like, go see what happens. If
a
you
lot
try
of
to fight him.
JRPGs do that too. They have the big bad right there, and then you beat him, cutscene, he crushes you, and it's just like, and then, hey kid, come fight me later, sort of thing.
As I said, I like the weapon breaking system. It forces you to be strategic with all your weapons and not just make a beeline to the best weapon in the game and then crush everything. Zelda, this is the thing. This was the first open world game I've played where I'm like, I like this open world.
Yeah.
Like, this is an open world I completely enjoyed exploring and I think fit the story, whereas usually it's one or the other. And that's just very rare. Even things like Gravity Rush 2, you can like pause that game and just go to the quest menu and be like, I want to do the next quest. Like, I don't even want to fly around this open thing. This was it. So my number 5, Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. And with that, Zelda is not our number 1s. It happened. Welcome to the first list on the internet where Zelda isn't number 1.
But if Kellen was here, it would have been, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jumping into the big leagues now. Number 5, Nier Automata. And I don't say automata like those guys do. Positives.
It's
for the
automata.
Game. Automata. I know how to speak. Positives for the game, surprisingly good atmosphere. Both visually and audio-wise. It's a little odd compared to most games, but I think the game benefits from it. It's very unique, has a lot of character. Usually that's said in a bad way, but I mean it in a very, very good way. There's a lot of customization in the game, and I don't mean you can mess with their hair length, your character's hair length. That sort of customization, all in the menus. You can take everything off the HUD. You can leave everything on the HUD. You can have automatic defenses, attacks. You can have none of that and just hit really hard. You can make the game what you want it to be, and it allows you to craft to your own preferences. Excellent narrative that keeps your attention the entire time, and it makes you care about like interpersonal relationships of robots, non-humans, for the most part.
This is really hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to care about something you can't.
Apparently, Mario's not a human, so.
It's hard to care about things you can't really identify with or understand. Robots are pretty close to us, I guess, but negatives. Upgrade system is a cool idea, and I think it has average execution in a lot of ways. Another one, too much time spent in the menus. Once again, I think it's not as bad as some of the other games I've said it about, because, like I said, the crafting thing is really cool. How do I make these things I really want fit in here without destroying my automatic defense, or how hard I hit some of these guys, and a lot of mixing and matching and stuff like that. Like, it felt really cool to build your game for the most part, but it did take a lot of time to do that stuff, especially buying upgrades to that, making better parts, things like that. I'm not entirely sold on the multiple endings kind of gimmick. I prefer one long story with like a true ending, like that style of game where it's just like you met criteria A, B, C, and D, here's the true ending sort of thing. I would have rather stretched it out instead of, oh, the game's over, start again. Oh, the game, like the system that it kind of implemented. I know it's not as basic as I'm making it, but I would prefer one long stretch of the game and then end it that way rather than not really jumping through hoops, but the way that it went about it. Some of the deltas or things that they could have made better, I think either go full RPG or full action adventure. I think some aspects of both were a little lacking because they landed closer to the center. I would have preferred a little bit more polarized either way. I would have liked to see more clothing and armor options.
You want to see more clothing on 2B?
Options. I put, don't make this a waifu simulator as much. I just wanted to get more than we got.
Yeah, it's weird because there is clothing options. Like 2 of them.
Yeah. And another delta, I have to mention it because it's always a part of some of these things, make the PC version work correctly. I think that I would have liked this game on PC substantially more. That doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the PS4 version. Obviously, it's number 5 with some stiff competition. Really enjoyed it. Think the PC version could have made it that much more interesting, and I don't know why they won't fix it. It's not like they've tried and tried and tried, and, you know, hey, we fixed it for you guys. Oh, well, blah, blah, blah. We don't have it. They just, like, it's over. Like, we're
working on the second one.
We missed the boat on that. Sorry about that. But would have helped. But yeah, number 5, Nier Automata? Automata?
Automata. Pia. Number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Persona 5. Persona 5 was an amazing 110-hour experience. Spending my time changing hearts by dungeon crawling, collecting personas, and solving puzzles, as well as going to school dating best girl Futaba and working in the flower shop, was engaging and fulfilling the whole way through. The menus, environments, cutscenes, and even the loading screens ooze style in a way no other game has done to this day. Add on top of that arguably the best, or second best, soundtrack of the year. This game is flawless mechanically and depth-wise and performance-wise, unlike a lot of game releases of this generation. If the game did anything poorly, it was compared to its other entries in the series. Persona 5 felt a little safe at times, making characters that felt not weak enough to be the worst in the series, but not strong enough to be the best. Everyone fit into their own spot on the team, and it felt like they stayed in their spot without too much give or take. Persona 5 has set the bar incredibly high for any future turn-based JRPGs, and I cannot wait to hop back into the world with anime, dancing games, and hopefully more unannounced spin-offs.
Keep them coming.
Oh, yeah. So, like, this is the thing about Persona 5. I beat Persona 4. I loved it. Watched the anime, loved it. Played the fighting game, loved it. Played the dancing game, loved it. Played P3 as the girl character. I did the PS2 one and the the PSP one. Watched the movies. Like, there's been all this stuff. This is the first Persona that's released where I'm like, I beat it. There's nothing else to do.
You got nothing to do with all that energy.
Yeah, I'm like, so maybe if the anime was out already, maybe if, the dancing game was coming out right on top of it.
You've got Persona blue balls for the most part, is what you're saying.
Basically, like, I want more of it, especially, and unfortunately, because there was some parts in this game where I was like, ooh, this is the moment where the gang is going to be awesome together.
Yeah. And
that really never formed in this game, and that was the disappointing part to me. Usually when they go on trips and they're doing that stuff together, that's when the magic happens, so to speak. That's when all the characters are having their banter. That's when all the most memorable moments from all the series kind of happen. And in this one, some of the characters don't even go to school with you. Like, you don't see them that often. And I think that was probably like the disappointing part of the game, the playing it very safe. I really stand by it. I think this story is actually the boldest and riskiest story that they've done out of all of them. They touch on some really dark and kind of disturbing topics, so I applaud them for that. But as far as the characters go, it felt like they kind of took a piece of this one, and then made that one. None of them felt like their own. With that said, the game is incredible 10 out of 10 game. The intro was amazing, introducing a traitor early on, and then kind of Quentin Tarantinoing it, and then playing back to getting to that spot worked really well for me.
Media that does that, because usually, I just usually don't like it, but I was all aboard.
Yeah, it worked really well. Like, it made you, like, I think a lot of the problem with Persona, and I think they know, is it's got a long intro, and maybe if you get burnt out, you don't want to go back to it type thing. Like, you're going, you kind of stop. But introducing a traitor in the opening scenes and then going, how did we get to this point, is an awesome idea to make people go, well, I do want to know who the traitor is. It just keeps you engaged always, and it keeps you on your toes for every time there's a new character being introduced. You're like, is this the traitor? What did they say that's suspicious?
You start looking for things that you normally wouldn't have looked for. Yeah.
So I thoroughly enjoyed that idea. It added new mechanics. Not only new mechanics, it added new elements with the nuclear and the psychic powers. It added elements from the old games with guns.
Old games, yeah.
Yeah, with like introducing guns. And like everything seamlessly worked. It didn't feel like they broke any mechanics or anything like that. So that was a nice surprise. I was last surprise. I was a little worried that they had too much going on, but they do really spoon feed it to you, and like you don't even encounter things with some of those elements until later in the game. They really kind of slowly trickle it out. The handcrafted dungeons are amazing. They made similar to Zelda. Nothing beats a handcrafted world. You make a procedural world, it could be cool, it could be horrible. It could just be unfair and there's too many enemies on top of each other, or too many dead ends that just don't make exploring fun. This time they built these many story palaces by hand, added exactly, the enemies follow exactly where they need to be following. They have hiding spots exactly where they need to be, and it was just really well done with a lot of love and care.
The good thing about that is, too, they didn't put this guy in a castle because he's a prince or he likes castles sort of thing. Every environment that you see...
I like castles.
Every environment that you see matches the personality of the kingpin or the bad guy that's there. To a T. There's literally, for every room, for every piece of art on the wall, or every object in the corridor, in the room, in the whatever, there's a reason why it's there, and it feels really, like you say, handcrafted. Like it's almost like the DNA of that character is the palace.
Yeah. The confidant system, just in general, is, I don't want to say an upgrade completely from the social links, because I do like certain things about the social links better. But the confidant idea that you get rewarded every time, every level, makes you want to hang out with people. Maybe there is a day where you're like, man, I need to get to this dungeon, and I'm just going to burn through this day. Well, you're missing a reward that you could get. You could be, make healing items heal you more, or you could get access to a certain shop. Or if you start hanging out with your own party, you get the ability to swap party members on the fly, which makes the gameplay, the turn-based combat, which is usually slow, into a fast-paced, really engaging thing where you have an answer for every situation. And that's the best part about it. Except if you get jumped. When you start a fight, an even fight, you never feel like, oh, I'm at this huge disadvantage if you've been playing the game correctly.
And there's milestones within those rewards, so it's not like you have to hit level 10 else you haven't benefited, because it's hard in these games to get everyone to level 10 and do all the things over here and do all the things over there. It's nice where, okay, I can sacrifice this over here to get level 3 with this guy to get this cool bonus, and then I can go back and do this. All your options, which these games overwhelm a lot of people as far as here's your plate, and here's everything you can fit on it, sort of thing. The big stressor of these games, and that's nice that you have a little bit more option.
Yeah. So, like I said, thoroughly enjoyed the game. I do think it's a 10 out of 10. I do think it is... I think any of these top 5 games that I have are total, if you were to tell me this is my game of the year, I would not bat an eye or argue with you at all.
Anything in my top 10 could have beat 2016 at the very minimum.
At least stood up to the top ones for sure. Yeah. So, number 4, Persona 5.
Number 4 for me, game that I might need to tell you more about, Pyre, because you said it's the one game you...
Yeah, this is the game
I miss, I guess.
I tried to catch up on something, and then I beat it, and then I was like, ooh, I didn't play this, and I got that, and I beat it, and then I was like, ooh, Pyre, and I just didn't get to Pyre.
It's a tough life, what we do here. Positives for Pyre. Characters.
I like those 3 things.
Everyone's story and reason for being there in this game is wonderful. And about that story and about that setting, thrilled with the plot and the setting of the game. To make a long story short, the setting of the game is that you are in this, we'll just call it ruins, or just really just a different world or different kind of dimension, but don't get the idea that you're jumping through space or anything. Basically just a wasteland. And for people that have committed not really crimes, but have just lost the worthiness of being in the land where everyone else is, they get sent away to this area. And for you to get out of this area and go back to the land of, I will say the living, but you're not dead, to go back into the normal world, you have to earn your way through there by completing these rites, which are basically competitions. You can call them sports if you want to, but there's that sets it up for a traveling band of just all these groups of characters. You can call them clans if you want to, guilds, whatever you want. But all of these different sections of people have all gathered under banners, and basically their goal is to win the rights, win all the competitions, get to the final match, and when you win, one person from your team gets to go back into the regular world or society sort of thing. So the idea is it's the constant cycle of win all the way up to the top, send a guy home. Same thing, get someone else, fill out your team, win, send a guy home sort of thing. So everyone's reason for why are you no longer allowed in society? Why did you get kind of outcast or thrown out or exiled? Really good. It's nice to have that purpose, I guess, behind everyone being there. But what I just mentioned also makes it difficult for me to feel comfortable always making the best choice. There is no right choice. There's no fail in this game. There's no game over. It's just constantly adapt to what you want to do. And it's one of those where you and the guy next to you can play it, and you didn't send the same people home. You didn't even win. You made some different choices, and you got a completely different game. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Another big positive, it blended 2 genres in a way that I never thought possible. It was a great mix of a visual, walking simulator of sorts, and sports. I I've seen it mentioned before. It's Oregon Trail meets NBA Jam. And
awesome.
you don't take those two games and really match those up very, very often. And like I said, I didn't think it would work, but it does in a really great way. Negatives for this game: the payoff / end game, I guess, fell short of my expectations that I had while playing. I didn't know anything going into the game about what to expect. And the impact of my choices were not quite at the level that I imagined. But asterisk there, someone else can have a completely different experience and make different choices or just lose. I never lost because I don't like losing any of the matches. And maybe they had a different outcome and that met their expectations or exceeded them. I think it felt a little too repetitive in some parts. Like I said, it's a very cyclical sort of game. You get to the end, whoever wins sends a guy out, do it again, sort of thing. The controls also were not as precise as I would have liked. Similar to Odyssey, no scheme was like quite perfect. I don't think it was to the extent for me as Odyssey was, but keyboard and mouse felt more like what I should be going through the story and the narrative part and clicking here, going through the map. Combat or the competition or the rights felt a little off using that, but going through the other parts of the controller also felt kind of just weird. So not to the extent that it was game-breaking or really frustrating. I just think the controls could have been tightened up a little bit. Other deltas that they could have done to make this game go up on the list: make the impact a little more severe from your choices, break the cycle of story rights a little more often, and tighten the controls. But I liked it enough to make it my number 4.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's not a AAA game, sort of like Hellblade, and maybe a few years ago these games didn't really have any business fighting at the top with some of these, but there it is.
Number 3. This is the hard one for me. This is the one that I teetered on the most. I was like, do I want this number 2? Do I want this number 3? Do I want this number 2? Do I want this number 3? I kept going back and forth. Number 3. Super Mario Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Super Mario Odyssey is a return to form for Mario that I know and love, an exploration-based, tight-controlled, 3D-based Mario. This feels like a sequel to 64 that is more than happy to add a capture mechanic in order to completely change up the gameplay. The mechanic isn't used as a gimmick, though, which is the most impressive part of the game, as that is something that could have easily become stale very quickly. However, Nintendo instead chose to make the pace in which you capture short, sweet, and to the point, and mostly optional, rather than having it drag on. Mario hasn't had this many movement options, abilities to skip, or be creative or explore at your own pace since 64, and this game can proudly sit next to that game as one of the best Mario games of all time. So they added this capture mechanic, and I was worried as soon as they did that, because this is a Nintendo gimmick.
Yep.
Nintendo, we got a gimmick in our game.
We gotta get it in there.
We're gonna run it straight into the ground. And the capture one, they didn't. They were like, you can become a roly-poly thingy, and you can do and go places, and that's it. Like, that's all it does. You don't have to use it. You can literally get through the game without using it, but it's there. Whereas I thought it was going to be like, ooh, you're the roly-poly thing. Now we made 700 different roly-poly challenges for you to use, and you're going to have to do them all. Like, instead of making you go, oh no, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of this mechanic. I don't want to be doing this anymore. They were just like, and you're in, and you're out. And you're like, man, I thought of more things to do with the roly-poly than Nintendo did. And then you're the next thing, and you're some bird. And you're like, what do you do with this? And you're out. And you're a dinosaur. What do you do with this? And you're out. It constantly made you switch. And there's like 100 things you can capture in this game. Like, there's so many things. There's main ones that they obviously want you to capture, but there's a bunch of different like hidden capture things that you can be.
My favorite one was the bird with the poke.
Oh, really? That's literally the only one I didn't like in the entire game.
I liked it.
It's the only one that I thought controlled poorly.
Oh, I just liked it because I could kill everyone around me.
It's funny. But yeah, not even joking, that is the only capture that I did not like from the main main game.
Seems right.
Yeah. Next up, in fact, did I write that? That would be funny if I wrote that. Anyway, next up, the movement options are incredible. You can, jump on your hat. You can then kind of do like a double jump. You can throw your hat. You can dive on your hat, bounce off your hat, throw your hat, dive to the hat again, and just span these huge scopes.
Wear the hat.
Or go vertically.
Yeah.
And you can skip all these segments, which made the game really fun. And like it was appealing to me because I would get a moon and then I'd go, I can think of 5 other ways I could get this moon already. Like, I can't wait to see what the speedrun community is going to do to this game, because I found out early on that the story parts in each world are actually optional.
Yeah.
You can just get the easiest moons to get and get on your way to the next kingdom. You don't need to do the story part of it. And once I found that out, I was like, oh, speedrunners are going to destroy this game, because they can just go get the 10 easy.
It's already pretty quick anyway.
Yeah, it's very quick. I've watched some of them. You just get the 10 easiest ones and you are out of there. Like, people get into the third kingdom in 5 minutes and stuff. It's crazy. So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, just the movement, the freeform movement where you have this flip kick and then jumping off the walls and then the dives and the back flips and the ground pound into a jump that makes you jump higher and like all this stuff. There's just so many moves at your disposal.
Now that you've mentioned both Zelda and Mario, I was going to wait for you. These are what I call the gift games of the year, where you can go onto the Reddits, you can go to the IGNs, whatever, and everyone's got this awesome thing that they did, that they recorded. Zelda obviously rolled a boulder and it fell down the hill and it hit this fire and did the thing, like chain reaction sort of stuff. And same thing with this. Everyone's got this like 1 or 2 really cool things where you either did record it or like, man,
I did.
If I had just recorded that, it'd be a YouTube sensation.
Yeah,
whatever.
This was, I think, one of the first games that gave you 30-second recording on the Switch. And I'm fairly sure I recorded one of my speedruns that I did for the challenges after you go to the world. You can talk to a turtle and like do a speedrun. You got to get to the end of the world in whatever time. And I found, I did it for like 15 minutes. I was like, I can make this jump if I just flip and dive and do it the right way. And I can skip the entire run. And I did it.
Nice.
It took a long time, but I was like, I can do this. Like, I know there is a way to make this. And I ended up, I think it was like a 1.5-minute run, and I did it in like 20-something seconds. I was like, yeah. But anyway, there's that. I 100%ed this Mario game. I got all, you get 1,000 moons, basically. I got 1,000 moons. I did all the extra boss battles and all that stuff. If they right now came up, Reggie's right over there. Hey, Kevin, you think that's all I have for you?
Yeah.
Right now, there's another Super Mario World, Kingdom, whatever, that you can enjoy. See ya. I'm going to go play it. Like, I played this game for so long, and I'm not even remotely bored of it. Just the fluid movement and everything was so great. The moments that you talk about, it's like an ode to itself with the Jump Up Superstar stuff. That was phenomenal. My favorite kingdom was actually the Cap Kingdom. Really liked the Cap Kingdom.
First one?
First kingdom. I think it was the perfect size. I preferred the smaller kingdoms rather than the really large ones that have a lot of terrain to cover. I think it was kind of the most... It wasn't the most creative, obviously, like New Donk City's super creative and things like that, but I liked the art style, kind of Tim Burton-y looking art style of that world. So that was my favorite kingdom. I just wanted to say that.
Metro's hard to not like the most. I like Bowser's Kingdom.
Those are my 2 least favorite.
Really?
Yeah. So
makes sense.
Metro Kingdom's interesting because I hated it. I liked the ending.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the actual world.
When you first arrived?
Yeah, okay. I was like, this doesn't feel like it's built for me to even be here. And it wasn't until I went back to it later that it jumped up a couple on my list. Bowser's Kingdom is fine. It's whatever.
I like the aesthetic of it.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah. The music there is awesome. And this is weird for a Mario game, but this is the first Mario game that I got like emotionally invested in. Like, I had an emotional attachment to a Mario game, which is really strange, particularly citing the New Donk City finale and the final kingdom that you get to go to. So really enjoyed Mario Odyssey enough to 100% it, which is insane. Because I look back at like Mario 64, I'm like, how many times did I 100% that? Maybe, honestly, not even ever.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I've 100% of that game. I know I have, like, with other people, like, we passed around the cartridge and did it, but I don't think I personally have ever done that. So that's a big feat. But yeah, Mario Odyssey, Mwah. My Switch game of the year.
So is Reggie actually coming here, or should I just go?
Oh, he's right there. Hey, Nick, I got something for you, too. Fire Emblem Warriors is getting DLC.
Obviously not the biggest
Fates.
Nintendo fan here. Reggie fan, though? Oh, yeah. All right, no Reggie, but we can go straight into number 3. Divinity Original Sin 2.
Ooh.
Positives, one of the deepest and most adaptive games I've ever played. You have a wide range of freedom in playstyle and builds, which is important for an RPG. Fully voiced characters add so much depth to the game from the usual classic RPG system, whether it's just text, like when you have a voice, it really helps add to the game. All the personalities of the NPCs makes for an exciting adventure. It checks off every single box that a classic RPG should, and it sets a new standard for the bread and butter of classical Western RPGs. Negatives, it's got a very, and emphasis on very, steep learning curve. It requires a lot of time to be invested to learn like every intricacy of the game. It's difficult, as in most RPGs are, to come back to or to jump back into after you've been away for a while. And also, this game is for the hardline RPG enthusiast, and it's not very approachable for beginners to the genre. Some deltas, some things they could have made better. I think they maybe could have added in a noob or like a baby mode for those who just aren't used to this sort of game. I've seen anytime Divinity Original Sin 2 is mentioned, I've seen it way at the top, whether it won a certain category or maybe it's obviously not Game of the Year because it's not named Zelda, but for people's personal picks and not here's my overall list or here's whatever my official list. Maybe it needs some sort of recap option. Maybe all Western RPGs need a recap option for when you boot up the save and you're back in it. Maybe a loading screen that says when you last played. Because it takes a while for you to go, who was I talking to? What was I doing? Sort of thing. It's hard to choose a good save point for these types of games. And that's really it as far as what they could have made better. I know a personal delta of mine was I wish I could have played it more. This is one of the few on this list that I didn't finish, at least to some degree. This game is very, very long, and I chipped away at it when I could in between big titles. I don't know if it could have jumped up any more for what it is on my list if I had got to play that extra 20, 30 hours. But I'm definitely not frustrated that, I chose Mario over 20 more hours of this or something else over. I think I got a good grasp of the game, and I think I can finish it. If there's a lull in this year, I know we didn't really get one last year, but if there is one this year, that'll be one of the first things I go back to. I know I told stories all over these podcasts when I was playing it. Big thing was just going into town. I was a big skeleton man in this game, and
I like this story.
People just really freaked out. You can choose humans, elves, the standard sort of like Tolkien sort of fantasy classes. But this game had the big skeleton man, and if I wasn't wearing my my flesh mask, or if I wasn't like wearing the skin of someone else, and I just strolled up into town as skeleton man, people would run, all the guards would show up, I'd die. Life was miserable. But once I started crafting some cool faces, I guess, and masks, stuff like that, started to feel all right. But yeah, you can almost do anything you want to as far as RPGs of this nature, the classical type, go. So you could almost call it sandbox if you wanted to, but freedom is a very good word to use to describe this game. You can go off the beaten path. You can make your own path. You can do just about anything your heart desires. Number 3.
Number 2, a.k.a. I'm doing my honorable mentions. So here's going to be my honorable mention list. So these are games that could easily have been number 11, number 12. Arguably, they're in my number 10 slot for some portion of it. In fact, there's 2 games that actually were, and I played a lot of games this week to try to, make sure they're as good as I remembered them and things like that.
Usually it's easy to get 5 off this list.
Yeah, I got 1 to 7
for any standard year.
Now what? So these could be any of those. So Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy, honorable mention. Can't do a remaster, even though it's not a remaster; it's a remake, but still too hairy to get in there. A Hat in Time, honorable mention. Ys 8, honorable mention.
Wow.
Danganronpa V3, an honorable mention. Everybody's Golf, an honorable mention.
Oh, yeah.
Friday the 13th, the game, an honorable mention, and was actually number 10 for a very long time.
Not number 13?
No, unfortunately. I think that game would have been number 10 if they didn't do the changes that I've been talking about, where they turned off some team killing and stuff like that. Nex Machina, an honorable mention. Fortnite, an honorable mention.
Not PUBG.
No. Shovel Knight, Spectre of Torment, an honorable mention. Tekken 7, an honorable mention. Uncharted Lost Legacy, an honorable mention. Splatoon 2, an honorable mention. Number 2, Resident Evil 7. I loved Resident Evil 7, and from my moment playing that game and finishing it and going through all this stuff, it's been my number 1 for months and months and months. I'm like, cool, but it ends at number 2. Rarely does reinventing the wheel work, but Capcom was able to pull it off with Resident Evil. But what Capcom was able to pull off with Resident Evil was nothing short of surprising and impressive. A shift in perspective to first person, playable start to finish in VR, and a return to a more grounded survival horror series, having a solid amount of replayability and unlocks, and having played through the whole game and its DLC in VR, Resident Evil 7 goes on my list of horror games I will constantly be revisiting for years to come. Resident Evil 7 is such a good return to form. It reminds me of PlayStation 2 horror games, and I mean that in the best way. Those are my favorite. They removed, for most of it, they put you back in the helpless position, which is what matters. The inventory management that you were talking about, like with Horizon and stuff like that. Like the inventory management, the fact that you have to do that on the fly, and there might be something coming towards you, and there's an item you want, and you need to decide what item to get rid of, and you have like 6 seconds to be able to do it.
It's the thing with horror movies too, like, oh god, I gotta open the door with this key. I'm fumbling around with the key, sort of thing. So it's that same sort of like jostling action. Yeah,
I like that return to form. They kind of did this interesting thing where the game was clearly broken into acts or sections. Yeah. There was like the Jack Baker house section, the Marguerite section. Like each member kind of had their own like trap and thing, and then it led to a boss battle with that character, which is really cool. The game is fully playable in VR, and this is probably where it gets pushed over the edge. I have completed it normally. I've completed it in VR. I've completed it on the hardest difficulty. I've completed it in 50-something minutes. Like, I'm very hardcore about this game. And the VR just adds this dimension to the game where all of a sudden, I don't want to even walk down that hallway. Like, because if something jumps out, it's going to scare me, which doesn't really happen to me when I'm playing on the 2D space. Like, a jump scare might make it, whatever. But in VR, I don't want to be grabbed. Like, it totally changes it.
You lose all your defense going from VR to 2D, or, vice versa. Because jump scare, even the first 2 Wolfenstein games of this new generation had jump scares, and I was always pissed when it happened. But it's just like a, brush it off sort of thing, keep going. But in this one, especially VR, they are in your face.
Your heart rate's going for the next sections of the game. You're on edge for the next, like, it gets you, which is awesome for a horror game.
And the headphones, too. You hear that creak behind you? I am not turning around. No way.
The helplessness through the game is something that I really enjoy, and this is in all my favorite survival horror games. Most of my favorite ones, you don't even have weapons. You are unable to defend yourself, and in this one, you don't have weapons. You go to the next section, you have weapons, but they're not great. You go to the next one, weapons are irrelevant. You go to the next one, you lose all your weapons, and then you're kind of reshuffling. And then you go to the next one, and you're just like awesome, and that's the biggest problem with the game is the "you're awesome" part. And I get it; it's hard to end a horror movie, let alone a horror game. Like you gotta finish off the threat, but not make the threat look weak and not scary, and it's really hard to do that.
Yeah. I think my favorite ways for those types of adventures or stories to end is like a really like intelligent thing and not just like muscle and guns or an explosion or just like crazy happenstance that just saves the day.
Hey, molded men, I'm here to bargain. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then there was a couple there was one character in particular in the game, a family member that like didn't get like his boss battle in his section. Everybody's like, where is that? And then you meet another character in the game who doesn't really have a story at all. She's just kind of there. And that's where the DLC came in. And it came in the form to me as the gold edition of the game, which had all the DLC, which I always champion when they make a gold edition. And I got it.
For the most part, this game was a good advertisement in favor of DLC and post-game.
Yeah, they did a good job. It almost felt like they gave the assets to different team members, and they're like, everybody create a little thing. And they have like one that's like 21, which is fine. They have one that's really cool where you're strapped into a bed, and you get out of the bed, and you have to figure out how to escape. But the mom checks on you every few minutes, and you need to put everything back. And if she notices that you've messed up the room, she kills you. Yeah. And I thought that was a really cool one. But anyway, the first DLC is the Not a Hero DLC, and this one deals with one of the family members that had a section in the game but didn't really get a conclusion to his particular section. And in this one, you're the commando. Oh, I got the guns and everything. And I was like, this is gonna suck. Yeah. Like I went into it going, this isn't gonna be good. They did a really good job. So what they did was they made enemies that can't be hurt by bullets. Simple. You did it. Yeah, now they're scary. Yep. You need a certain thing before they're able to be hurt, and you don't get that until the section's almost over. So they figured out a way to do it, and they built it almost like a Metroidvania where you go into this one area and you can't see and you're getting attacked by stuff, and then later you find night vision goggles, and then you can go through that area. And like there's these spores that you can't breathe, but later you get like a filter, and then you can go through that section. So they built like this weird Metroidvania Resident Evil thing, which was awesome.
That's old school Resident Evil too, where okay, I could have gone down here before, or this wasn't very successful, but now I can, sort of thing. So
so I really enjoyed that. I think they did a good job with that. The final boss fight was a Resident Evil fight, but because I guess I was doing it in VR, it was really engaging, and it was awesome. And then the other DLC was the End of Zoe DLC, which explains kind of what happens with that story arc and introduces a new Baker family member, Jack's brother, Joe, who's a boxer. It's Joe Boxer. So he's there, and you're just running up to these monsters and punching them. You got a bunch of combos. You're like Steve Fox or whatever from Tekken. You're doing all these combos. You got like power attacks and like jabs. It gets ridiculously silly. And this is, it's DLC, so I feel like it's okay. But there were still some good scares in it, and it didn't wear. It wasn't like too long to, each of these things is like an hour to an hour and a half. They all have unlockables. They all have an unlockable difficulty if you beat it in a certain amount of time, all the stuff that lets you unlock new things. So I really enjoyed that, and that's the big thing about Resident Evil 7 is the replayability of it to me is so good. And I play a lot of horror games, and I go back to them a lot, and that's why horror games end up really high on my list a lot of the times. Is I'm like, I'm going to go back to this game. Things like Until Dawn, I go back and I play those games. I love my Silent Hill games. I go back and play them, and like this is a game that next year, 2 years, it's going to be nearing Halloween. I'm going to be like, let's run through Resident Evil 7. Like I vaguely remember that game. Let's do that. So yeah, Resident Evil 7 probably on the back of VR, and locks my number 2 spot.
Spoiler alert, this isn't my number 2 or 1, so I'm just going to go ahead and say easily my favorite part of the game, Jack.
Oh yeah, Jack's
at least the base game. I haven't
Have you seen Joe?
I haven't seen the expansions yet.
I got to show you Joe. I think you'll like Joe more.
I personally watched this game. Someone that I normally watch was streaming it in VR, or he was in VR, but he was playing it and streaming it. I enjoyed it way more watching because this guy is just amazing. So he would have had the same reactions, probably a bit more exaggerated than I would have. and he's not as scared as I am. So it was nice watching that. But I really, really, really enjoyed this game, even just watching it.
It's a good one.
I will follow your same path and just do some honorable mentions right now. Seems like a good spot for it. I'll just do a handful. Any of these, sort of like you said, could have hit 10th, but when I really sat down and thought about it, even bias aside, Zelda felt like it should have been there. But yeah, my honorable mentions, Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age.
Oh, cool.
Who would have known in back-to-back years they would make Final Fantasies or release Final Fantasies that I enjoyed? Not much to say about that other than I really enjoyed the systems that they put into the game to speed it up, to make to fix pacing problems, basically, to counter that. Destiny 2. I know this game gets hated on a lot by, I guess, Reddit and people like that. I think they did a really good job. I'm glad it moved over.
I'm nervous for your number 2 now.
This is competing for 10th.
I know. That's why I'm surprised.
So I think they did a really good job putting it on PC. I'm very glad they did that. That always gets points in my favor. I think it feels at home on PC. I'm glad Blizzard picked it up. That was an awesome pickup for them. And it was kind of random at the time, but it just makes sense. Played a lot of this game. Haven't played the expansion just yet. Don't know if that really could have knocked it up on the scale for me or not. But it gave me my shooter of the year, which you won't really find in the rest of my list. I really like having that one solid shooter.
Multiplayer shooter.
We had World War II Call of Duty. We had some other options here and there. We had Splatoon. That kind of counts. But that really hit my late fall kind of niche for shooter, and it did its job, and that's why it's an honorable mention. Fire Emblem Echoes Shadow of Valencia was the re-inspired, remastered, whatever you want to call it. This is a gray area, but a game from 20 years ago that they wanted to make it modern. They wanted to bring it to current systems, and it worked. This was one of the Fire Emblems where you split off on different paths. You have this party over here, this party over there, which you noticed in Warriors, and then bring it back at the end. I liked both sets of groups, and I liked where the story went, and it felt like modern Fire Emblem games. Tekken 7, best fighter of the year, hands down.
This was number 10 on my list for a while, too. The other one was actually Puyo Puyo Tetris, which I didn't even have in my honorable mentions, but I want to give a shout-out to that game.
Easily the best fighting game when you just think about just the basics of fighting games. Yeah, you might like DC people, so Injustice, I can understand some of the high ratings for that, and it fixed some of the problems that another Injustice had. But Tekken 7, these games are usually more often than not, at least the mainstay games, pretty solid. This one, for the first time in a while, I feel like there's almost not a bad option for your fighters. When you go into these tournaments, whether you're hardcore pro or where you're playing with people online, there's usually 4 or 5 in a fighting game, where if you don't pick these, you're picking lower tier guys and you're going to get stomped. This one, it's pick whoever you want. All the same pros, all the people who play this competitively or even just for fun a lot, say just pick something you like and stick with it, and not just, hey, you really ought to play this, but if you like this, sure,
if you want to win, just pick Deadshot. Yeah.
There's no wrong answer sort of thing. And the DLC that they keep coming out with keeps pulling me in more and more as far as interest. And once Noctis hits later on this year, we in there, boys. We back. Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, needs to be mentioned. Almost can't believe that it didn't crack my top 10. Just because of pretty much everything you said. And I do invest a lot more into the Norse mythology, so that hooked me more than maybe the average Joe out there.
Joe Boxer.
I really need to see this guy, apparently. I don't know what else to say about Hellblade other than it's just one of those experiences where I really enjoy having the headphones on and just the voices. My claim to fame, you mentioned yours where you got lost and the voices
they
laughed at you. The thing that I always remember is, especially watching someone do it too, they were fighting and someone was swinging at him from behind, and one of the voices just says, behind you, and you just pull off that perfect parry or that perfect counter, boom.
Yeah, another cool thing that game does, not to go back to it on my list, but they don't tell you what does what in the game, and the voices help you, but they don't tell you. So, like, when you're in a fight, they'll be like, parry his attack. And it's like, oh, I can parry an attack. Like, how do I do that?
Other games would pop up a dialogue box, and this one's just a voice of many. Yeah. And last, probably should be least on a lot of people's radars, Andromeda, Mass Effect Andromeda. I liked what it wanted to do. I liked what it wanted to do. It fell short in some areas. I can't, in good conscience, put it in the top 10 when so many people had technical issues with it, even though I didn't. Really enjoyed the characters, really enjoyed the places I went to. Still kind of 50-50 on should they have made it sandbox or just stuck to the 30-hour, a little bit more linear, space opera sort of thing that they've kind of been known for with the other 3 games. Enjoyed it, though. Could have been much better. Ended way shorter. Its lifespan, I guess, was way shorter than it ought to have been since studios closed. No plans for DLC. But that leads me straight into number 2 with no real good segue. The best Switch game out now, Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Oh, I forgot about that game.
Positives, and this is in caps, sense of scale, both horizontally and vertically. I think this game has the best sense of scale. I know Zelda's map may be a little bit bigger as far as like total land size or square footage. Man, this one really got you. Yeah. But if you're talking about straight verticality, like doesn't get matched by Zelda, doesn't get matched by anything on the system, anything out this year. The areas you visit in this game are terrifyingly massive, and that is because, once again, long story short, all of the worlds, kingdoms, areas, whatever you want to call them, you are on the back of a very large, what they call a titan, so a beast. Whereas if you run up this path all the way to the summit of what you think feels like a mountain, that's just like a part of its spine, sort of thing. So these areas are very large. This game won skipped ahead a little bit. I think it's got a really intriguing message hidden behind a JRPG kind of story. Usually, this one's a little more fun, a little more goofy, a little more campy in some spots, but it's got a really good message about memories and what makes humans human, because a big conflict or struggle in this game are these beings that don't retain their memories but can live forever versus humans who have short lifespans compared to infinity at least, but memories are kind of what make us. So sort of that struggle, and it's really cool because it's hidden under a layer of goofy, sort of stuff. There's another positive, or another big positive for me, is there's always something to do in this game. 100 hours was not nearly enough. I want to guesstimate that I was about 60% done when I hung up my jersey at like 104 hours, I think was my game time. It's grindy, but with huge narrative and gameplay payoffs. So usually grinding is just like to get that 100,000 gold to get the cool armor or something. But this one, the more time you put into your companions and the more time you put into your supports and stuff like that, you get cutscenes, you get stories, you get to go to these different places and you get payoff for it. So it's really nice to get that, because it can be terrifyingly grindy at some times. Negatives with the game. Some of the game systems are a little too complicated. I mentioned this with JRPGs earlier, and that's just kind of their thing. Sometimes they can get unnecessarily complicated. I said that this leads to rabbit hole gameplay. I would call that sort of like Skyrim, where you're going to go do something. Ooh, a cave, rabbit hole. Come out of the cave, what was I doing? Okay, I'll go do this, rabbit hole. That's fine to some degree, but when it's too much like that, it can have a negative effect, to me at least. I think that makes this game very necessary to have a guide. as to what you do, so you don't lose 20 hours doing this when you could have done it in 3 and gotten back on track, sort of thing. A lot of wasted time, I guess, is where I was going with that. The in-game compass and quest marker can confuse a lot of players and a lot of reviewers. That same notion got easily lost in the massive worlds because of it. Also, it can be a bit of a technical mess in some large battles. Some of these battles can have very big monsters. Like I said, scale doesn't just apply to the worlds. Sometimes you can just stroll up to like a level 80 dude when you're level 5, and then he's got a pack of 10 level 10s with him, and these big fights like that can really slow down the game because a lot of the combat is very time sensitive, so you're not waiting so much for like a button masher or certain things to pop up on the screen, but you have windows where you can take a combo or something like that and really stretch out the combat versus just do this attack, do that attack, do this, do that. So when you have horde of enemies swooping in that you've aggroed that you didn't really mean to, sort of like an MMO, you aggro too many camps, all that swinging in when it's giving you these little windows, the frame rate can drop and stuff like that. So, as I said about Mario, not the best technically made game for the Switch so far. That made me feel like it was a Wii U port that they brought over. I feel like they hit about 60% or something like that of development, and then Nintendo came knocking and say, "Hey guys, we're gonna make the Switch to Switch. So go ahead and make it for that instead." And I feel like maybe that's where some of the technical stuff came up in. Delta, things they could have gotten better about the game. They could have adjusted the roll rates on some of these drops to make it less random for rares. There's like the big Pokemon sort of system in this game with your supports where you can get this all-powerful god thing where you can just go and crush enemies, or you get the derpy little healer that, doesn't really do anything, and you just kind of send it off on random side quests. It's always frustrating in whether you're going loot boxes or just randomization sort of rolls to if you get the cool shining jewel of whatever and you roll it and get like a derp out of it, you wanted the big powerful guy. So make it less random. It's not like loot boxes, but it's about as close as it gets without being a loot box. Make the in-game compass adapt to the direction you're going. So if the objective's over there, then the thing points over there. Where in this game it just gives you like it says you are 100 feet away, and if you start to walk this way, you're 105 feet away. Maybe I need to walk this way. You're 110 feet away.
It's got the Pokemon Go footprint system going on.
It needs an actual compass and like something to point. Or it can institute what a lot of games do. They give you that transparent marker on the ground to sort of show you where you need to go, sort of thing.
I like that.
Do any of those. Also, the big thing that they could have done, maybe delay the release to fix some of the technical problems with the game. Who knows? But number 2.
I thought you were going to have Mass Effect as number 2. I was like, you're a brave boy.
No. Someone would show up at my door at that point.
Number 1, Nier Automata. Nier Automata is a masterpiece. From a third-person action game to bullet hell shooter to side-scroller, Nier Automata expertly transitions from genre to genre without dropping an ounce of quality along the way. Epic-scale boss battles and flashy combat keep you engaged for your first playthrough until you finish and load up your second run. That is when you realize the context and consequence for your previous actions. Following your next playthroughs, which I have in quotes because they're not really new playthroughs, themes, ideas, and questions proposed that have never resonated with me in any medium finally found a way to with this title. Taro Yoko out-Kojima'd Kojima in many respects with Nier, and it had me speechless at times. This game ran the gauntlet of emotion for me, from childlike joy to horrific and terrifying to emotional and defeated. On top of it, Nier Automata has what I consider the best ending of any video game I have ever played, and I can gladly name it my game of the year, 2017. So Nier Automata is my game of the year. So the playthrough thing,
yeah,
I don't like this. they do call them playthroughs, and specifically when you beat the game nudges you and it goes, "Hey, you should try it again. Some things might be different on your second playthrough." And you load it up, and you're like, "Oh, this is a different game." Like, why didn't they just call it Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3? Was a little bit strange.
Yeah.
I do agree with that because it just puts this this kind of preconceived notion that you're going to be doing it again, and that's not what it is.
And I think average Joe out there, not Joe Boxer, average Joe is going to see a credit scene and is going to be, I did it. I mean, most people probably don't care. Oh, I didn't get 100% of the trophies. I bet there's something else out there for me to do. And I think most people nowadays understand the concept of a new game plus sort of thing. Oh, it might just make the enemies tougher or something like that.
And this is nothing like that. This is a different story, a different perspective, a different it is.
I mean, you don't
almost
even
not the same.
You don't even see some of the characters in the first playthrough.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Not in the same way, at least.
So each one changes the perspective of the story, introduces new mechanics and new gameplay elements, and they're more similar to chapters. The game plays with the medium, which is something that we've talked about kind of a lot here, and something that I really like. I clearly like games that jump into multiple genres and are able to do them well. And I also like games that play with the medium. This game could only be just that, and that is a game. Like, you couldn't make this a movie. You couldn't make this a book. It wouldn't.
Especially
wouldn't work.
with a credits roll in the middle of the movie. I guess it's time to go.
You got to go see the sequel.
Only Marvel can do that, apparently. So,
hey, it's not over yet. But yeah, this wouldn't work as a TV show or a book, and it asks questions of the player to do things that none of those other mediums could possibly do. I think it out Kojima in a lot of respects. For just a couple, things that it did. Tying your ability systems to chips, where you upgrade through installing new chips and removing chips. However, removing particular chips could just kill your android, which I thought was really clever. You can go fishing and eat a poisonous fish and die.
Yep.
Like that. That is a thing that happened. You get hit with, this one's cool for like the android, you're playing as this android. You can get hit with abilities that shut down different features of your android, such as your ability to perceive color or your hearing, which I thought was really neat.
Some can launch you into a minigame.
The action gameplay has passed Bayonetta in both style and substance, in my opinion. The only thing that I think it falters to with Bayonetta is Bayonetta's bright colors and neons, whereas this
that's
game
where I was almost there with you.
Is very gray and brown. I mean style gameplay.
Yeah, not flashy.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously Bayonetta's got a lot of color going on. It's gray, it's dark, it is a post-apocalyptic world. Like,
that's what I was saying about surprisingly good atmospheric when I said that, is because you look at that color palette and you're not immediately, when you see that normally, you're like, oh boy, this is going to be rich and vibrant, full of, life. It actually kind of was in some
I mean, there's animals and, there's things there, but it's not... It's not this overpopulated world. It's a sad, destroyed, defeated world that you are fighting for, and that is kind of part of the game. Like the whole "what are you fighting for" type questions.
A lot of morality in there.
Yeah, the music. I'll bring up the music because obviously it won Best Soundtrack. I understand the Best Soundtrack win completely. I believe Polygon did a video on its soundtrack, and I'm not so unsure that they brought that to the meeting and we're like, watch this video, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, best soundtrack. Like, it talks about how the music evolves in the game. So it's not just great music constantly. It starts out as a heartbeat of music, and then it goes into children's music, and then they become more mature, and then it becomes like war themes, and they evolve as the game evolves, and that's the advantage of having a story that kind of pushes you forward and forces you to follow its structure a little bit. The game basically begs you to play it as a video game, doing quests, collecting things, talking to vendors, and slowly you learn that that's not really what this game is about. It's not about being a video game. It's all kind of to distract you and invest you in the product so that you can get to ending A and B and C and D and E and experience what those are and what they mean for the story. So I really like the idea of having something where you go through it and you think, oh, this was a fun video game, ha ha ha, and then like you do the next playthrough and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
What have I done? Why is this happening? I really enjoy that. So, and I stand with my statement. I've thought about it ever since I said it to Craig, I believe. It's my favorite ending in a video game. I think it's really, really solid and really, really good. And it is a platinum trophy that I am proud to have. So, Nier Automata, my game of the year. Does that surprise you? Curious.
Resident Evil surprised me more than I don't know if you played Possum on it the whole year.
I didn't play Possum, but I knew it was going to be. I knew it was going to be number one. Up until I finished all of Nier, like I platinum Nier, and I was like, oh god. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, and Nier was number one, and I was like, okay, number two is Resident Evil, and then I played Mario, and I was like, oh no, what's going on?
No, I knew you liked Nier. It was Resident Evil that landed way higher than.
Yeah, it's the VR, man. The playing that in VR is just a different experience.
Well, you can probably see what's coming with my number one.
I'll never see it coming.
Persona 5, easiest choice of the year for me.
Really?
I know this is 1 through 10 or 1 through 32 in my case. But you get to number 4 or number 5, number 4, number 3, number 2, and then 1 is just
wow.
Way.
So to me, 1 is pretty high. It's not higher. My 2 and 3, like I said, I was going back and forth on them, and then I think the other ones are kind of bunched down there. But like I said, if you walked up to me and you were like, Hellblade's my game of the year, I'd go, yeah, man.
Gotcha.
Cool. I agree. That's fine.
Positives for this game that I'll try to keep a few minutes long. Visuals. Best visuals of 2017. And by visuals, I don't just mean best looking in 4K HDR. I also mean the flashiness. I also mean the style, the class, just like everything. This poured it on thick with that. Even down to the menus, which I've talked about menus way more than I care to with all these games. The menus, you're in the menus a fair bit in this game too. Doesn't matter. They
Best
look awesome.
menus ever made.
It won my game cast of the year 2017. It won my game soundtrack of the year 2017. Teammates to me were god tier.
Really?
I understand what you're saying, and I'll get to this in a second too. That it feels like, oh, we like this about this character in 4. Well, we like that about this character in 3. Got one.
Yeah. It was a little Danganronpa 3 for me. It kind of felt like they did that too.
Along with the rewards that you get, I think the Confidants were the best in the series as a whole, packed together. Obviously, there were some great ones in 4. There were some amazing ones in 3. 2, they don't really have the system, but there's some cool NPCs. So there might have been some higher highs and some lower lows in the other games, but this one, if you take the average of all of them, I think it's the best group. The rewards help, though. The music just tied everything together. I think it was the backbone of the game. Without the music, you don't have Persona 5. Like this had that acid jazz kind of funk rhythm to it. It really felt like it bumped the rebelliousness of this group and like the savvy kind of cool thing, because all these characters, they're not the coolest kid in the class. They're not the most liked. They're not anything, but this gave them all that like substance and style that these classy, all of a sudden everyone in this town, city, world, whatever, looks up to them, whereas they didn't have that before. But because they have these cool outfits, because they have this cool music bumping behind them, that just helps. And I think without the music, you don't have the game as much or more than any of these other ones. Nier, obviously you take the music away, it loses a bunch, like you just mentioned. Some of these other games, Mario could have lived without it, I guess. Zelda did live without it. No music at all.
Splatoon's music's awesome too.
But I think you take the music away, and that takes the very soul of the game away. I'll mention some cons, not too many though. Some confidant stories could have been a little bit better. I think one in particular, had a lot of similarities with Rise from 4. I think Rise's was better. I think they missed the boat on a story that they could have tied on into that was early on in the game that just kind of fell by the wayside, and I think they could have done better. Biggest miss of the game, there's a major gap in the calendar, about 2 months, and it left me scratching my head a little bit, and bleeds right over into the Delta. They could have made better use of side characters instead of kind of retreading the water. 2, they could have made a much better use of that gap that in the timeline where nothing happens. But looking from past experience, I fully expect a Persona 5 Crimson to come in. And where's a big chunk of that story going to happen? The gap that's waiting for it. I don't want to insinuate that they purposefully left it there. It makes sense in the game. It's just weird to see, hey, I'm playing the game. Oop, there goes a day. There goes a day. And then you get to that point and it just goes just straight through 2 months. And you're like, okay. They make it make sense, but I feel like they left something on the table and I didn't want them to at all. Especially when you're getting to that point. I won't say if it's early game, mid game, late game, wherever it's at. But right before that point, you're making the best use of your time or whatever, and that hits and you're like, oh, I didn't plan for that or anything. So that's some stuff that they left on the table, but what they did leave us with, like you mentioned before, you want the anime right now, you want the dancing games right now, you want the fighting games right now, you want spin-off, like, I mean, that's Persona. They did everything that they should have done as far as checking off all the boxes, and they gave me something. We were hyping this for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I remember the Persona 5 2014 poster.
Yeah.
That was a poster that exists.
In the back of my mind, the more I hype, the more I get scared. I'm like, oh, no, here comes another Mass Effect 3.
I will say, there's only been maybe 2. I can think of 2 off the top. There might be 3 games where I was so hyped for that game. Gravity Rush 2 might actually be one. But I was so hyped for that game, and I played it, and I was like, oh, no, please don't, make me hate you, because I'm so up here.
Uh-huh.
And it did it. I wasn't disappointed by the game, and that's hard to do.
And it's hard with Persona in general. Any sort of franchise that has sequels, but they're not directly tied to each other. It's easy to say, oh, this God of War is better than this one, or this Grand Theft Auto. Maybe not even Grand Theft Auto, but some sequels like that, it's easy to say this one's better than this one. But when you have a franchise, but they're all disconnected, for the most part, you're much more naturally saying, but this one was, you're comparing them a little more often. It's a little more heated, too, as far as you getting into it. Maybe we'll go over that one day. But not
soon.
Not to compare this to the other ones as much. We'll get into that. But as far as anything else on the table, in our notes, whatever, this was just the complete experience. I did not, when I had to set an alarm because it was just like every light off, TV screen, seat, when I was playing and headphones on. When I set my alarm and it would say, hey, 11 p.m., you might need to sleep a little bit before 4 a.m. work tomorrow. I was pissed. I was like, I do not want to stop playing this. I got that feeling with a lot of games in various degrees on here. Even Mario, at some point, when I hit a couple of the stages, I was like, I don't really want to set the controller down. But this one was just start to end. They fixed the pacing issues because Persona 4 Golden takes a while to get into. Persona 3, not as bad, but it has dips in the pacing. This one is just go. It had everything I wanted, and I had my hype way high, and it somehow cleared it with plenty of room left over. And I can't wait to get more Persona this year, next year, lots of years after. So, game of the year.
I approve of that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Kellen, what's your game of the year?
League of Legends.
All right, thank you, Kellen. That's it for our Game of the Year 2017 episode of the Press X Podcast. Please leave your Game of the Year list. Put your criteria, what you go by, what makes it a Game of the Year for you down below, and tell us what games you've been enjoying this year and what one you think would be your numero uno, as we did. Thank you for being here, Nick.
But of course.
And thank you so much for watching. We'll speak with you next time.